Chapter 383. Chapter 383. A bunch of madmen, she's gone. She disappeared so quickly. The black yak, the Manchurian tiger, and the others were tipsy. They chased after the shockingly beautiful lady and wanted to send her off with their eyes. In the end, they found that she had vanished without a trace. It was too fast. It was as if she had teleported. They had clearly seen her graceful and alluring back just now, but in the end, she had vanished from the face of the earth. Chu Feng possessed the fiery eyes, but he felt a sharp pain as soon as he used them. In a daze, he saw a bolt of lightning flash past before everything returned to normal. This sister's divine instincts were too terrifying. She had sensed it in advance and used a secret technique to suppress his eyes' special abilities. This made it impossible for him to stare at her just now. How regretful! Chu Feng muttered to himself. Aren't you afraid of getting a pinprick? The toad curled its lips. It already knew about the special abilities of Chu Feng's eyes and cursed him inwardly for being so daring. He actually wanted to see through that fairy sister's true body? Your thoughts are too filthy. Chu Feng's old face turned red. With that, he gave the toad a hard slap on the head. Oh! The toad cried out in pain. It felt a sharp pain in its head and saw stars. It was immediately enraged. Was there still justice in this world? It was clearly your thieving eyes looking around. How can you accuse me of being filthy? This was a typical case of a thief crying thief. Chu Feng, this grandpa will fight it out with you. Apparently, this kind of resistance was useless. The toad had suffered a fat beating for no reason. This made it rather indignant. A dignified divine beast actually couldn't beat a human. One day, we'll enter the other starry seas and strike it rich. Chu Feng looked at the toad and laughed. What do you want to do? The toad retreated. When the time comes, we'll fight beasts. Chu Feng smiled. F***ck your grandpa. The toad stomped its feet furiously. It immediately wanted to practice the toad fist with Chu Feng. The group left Shuntian. In the recent days, they were fairly down to earth and immersed themselves in the world of mortals. They went in and out of restaurants and clubs every day and drank all kinds of wine cellars. How could they rule the world? After leaving the city of Shuntian, the night breeze sobered them up a little. That woman's family roamed the sea of stars, fought divine beasts, gambled on ultimate origin stones, and interacted with the goddesses of imperial dynasties in the cosmos. How could they compare? The difference was too great. We'll do our best to solicit alms from the corporations. A group of people wanted to kidnap me, so we'll pay them a visit and borrow some things from their treasury, said Chu Feng. When he was in Wudong, there were several groups of people who attacked him at night, wanting to capture him. At that time, they all thought that he was crippled. At that time, the old Grandmaster said that there was a Grandmaster of fist techniques from the previous generation who came to visit. He was even older than the old Grandmaster and secretly attacked the mountain. Moreover, there was more than one person. That night, the old Grandmaster sensed the blood energy of an old friend. One of them came from the Baji sect and was close to 130 years old. He practiced fist techniques and was invincible in the past. There was another person who came from the 8 trigram school. His blood chi was like the sea, and his fist intent was able to deduce the power of divine arts. It was truly terrifying. Chu Feng had always coveted those ancient fist manuals. Now that he had an honorable reason, he wanted to go around and comprehend them. Of course, we'll also pay those corporations a visit and borrow some things from them, said Chu Feng. I like it. The corporations are the most loyal. This golden Arhat staff in our hands came from their treasury. The black yak nodded excitedly. The Manchurian tiger also nodded in agreement. Yes, those bastards are too evil. After Kunlun fell into trouble, they added fuel to the fire. Now that Kunlun is jointly managed by all parties, it's time to collect some interest. A while ago, a group of great demons from Kunlun fell into trouble. Their realms fell and they all went into hiding, withdrawing from Kunlun. This led to a change in ownership. It could be said that the corporations had exerted great efforts to jointly manage Kunlun with the Hollow Jade Temple and the Marine race. After the old Lama and the others came out, they were negotiating with people in Kunlun, hoping to get those people to leave. Oh, let's go to various places. I'm sure they'll be tactful and leave Kunlun quickly. The old donkey also agreed. Yellow Cattle, what special materials do we need to refine medicine? Chu Feng inquired. This time, he wasn't prepared to stir up a bloody storm. Instead, he wanted to amicably obtain some valuable items from the various powers to upgrade himself. Presently, he had plucked a number of mutant fruits, enough to sever one's sixth shackle. He wanted to borrow the revered 8 trigrams furnace from Mount Zhijin to refine them. Mixing all kinds of mutant fruits together with the rock blood, he might be able to refine an extraordinary medicinal liquid that would allow him to evolve once again. Divine beast blood is very important. It can turn something rotten into something miraculous, but this kind of thing is too precious. Ordinary people won't be willing to use it, Yellow Cattle explained slowly. He was somewhat worried at first. Even though he had refined some ancestral blood from the Dark Rock King's body and refined some silver blood from the extraterrestrial tiger's body, it wasn't much. That was because the true blood produced by these 2 extraterrestrials was sparse and impure. But now I'm not worried anymore. We don't lack the most important divine beast blood. Yellow Cattle glanced at the toad. The toad couldn't sit still anymore. He glared at him with a guilty conscience and said, "Little brat, what are you looking at? Watch out or this grandpa will beat you up." At present, his mouth and eyes were crooked and couldn't recover. His appearance was indeed a bit ugly. Compared to the beautiful and exquisite Yellow Cattle, he was the polar opposite. Yellow Cattle hooked his little finger at the toad and invited him to a battle. "Not bad. We don't lack divine beast blood." The group of people nodded and began to laugh mischievously. "Grandpa, I don't want to play with you guys anymore." The toad was scared. He then jumped up and was about to escape. Unfortunately, he was caught by Chu Feng and suppressed forcefully. "Ah, I'm a divine beast from the number 1 family on Earth. Who dares touch me? Sister Fairy, save me!" The toad let out a heart-wrenching and lung-splitting cry. "What are you yelling for? If we really want to find all kinds of refining materials, we'll only need you to contribute a bit of blood. When the time comes, we'll split the medicinal liquid and divine pills with you. They'll definitely help you evolve." "Nonsense, I'm providing divine beast blood. How can giving me pills make up for the loss?" The toad was unconvinced. "Don't you see how much milk the pasture can produce every day? And what do those cows eat? It's just grass. It's the same for you. You're contributing divine beast blood, but you can actually make up for it by eating some random things." The toad was furious after hearing this. "Madman Chu, you're too immoral. Don't you know how to use metaphors? This grandpa will fight it out with you. Do you really think I'm a cow?" "Behave, you're too noisy," said the black yak. The toad turned back and glanced at him sideways. "Hey, aren't you a cow? Why don't I see any milk? You're really useless. With your size, you should be producing a lot of milk every day. How come I don't see a single drop?" One had to admit that his mouth was really asking for it. The black yak was in human form now, but after hearing this, his face turned as black as the bottom of a pot. He wanted nothing more than to bite the toad to death. "Moo! Thump, 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 damned cow, how dare you sneak attack me? Watch this grandpa's beating the bull across the mountain fist. I'll beat you up even if you're separated by a Manchurian tiger. This is a peerless heavenly art." Roar. The Manchurian tiger roared, "Little tadpole, are you courting death?" The toad's face was swollen as he flew and shouted, "Goddamn it, so the legends are true. You can't touch a tiger's butt. I'm just borrowing strength to beat a bull across the mountain. What are you so anxious about? Moo. Roar. Croak. Hee-haw, hee-haw. Grandson, who are you calling son? You dare use your black donkey's hooves to kick me. This grandpa will beat you to death, croak. This place was immediately thrown into chaos as people fought wildly. Chu Feng felt a headache coming on. Yellow Cattle, on the other hand, was very quiet. He watched the liveliness from the side and reminded the others, "This toad is deliberately provoking us. He wants to take advantage of the chaos to escape. You guys beat him up. Calf, you bastard, you're too hateful. If you have the guts, come and fight me one-on-one. Oh my God, don't hit the face when you hit someone. I'll fight whoever dares to touch my handsome face. Damn it, do you want to die, Manchurian tiger? Oh my, you black cow that can't produce milk, are you tired of living?" Afterwards, Chu Feng no longer felt a headache. He sat together with Yellow Cattle and the Golden Eagle and watched them fight with great interest. He would let them toss him about. In the end, the toad was in a miserable state. It provoked them alone and wanted to take advantage of the chaos to escape. In the end, Yellow Cattle and the others joined in to beat it up. Goddamn it, what a pity! This grandpa's peerlessly handsome face has been beaten into this state by you guys. Oh my God, it hurts so much. The toad's mouth and eyes were crooked after being poked by that person from Mount Longhu. Now it was even worse. Its eyes were black and blue, its lips were like sausages, and its head was full of bumps. Its face was swollen like a pig's head. How refreshing! Although the black yak's face was also purple, he felt refreshed. "You cow that can't produce milk." The toad turned back and said. Immediately, the black yak's expression turned dark. He was extremely unhappy and white smoke was coming out of his nostrils. "Damn toad, you're really asking for a beating." Along the way, Chu Feng quietly left the group and told them to wait for him in front. He rushed through the night to the foot of Mount Taihang. Chu Feng's hometown, Qingyang Town, was here. He met Zhao San in private and left some mutant fruits for him. The thunderous bow was given to him by the old man. He also went to the general goods store and met Uncle Lu in secret. He also left some mutant fruits for him. Back in town, these two old men were no different from his family. Chu Feng left as quickly as he came. This wasn't the first time he had returned, but he had always done it in secret. He didn't want to be discovered and bring trouble to the old man. In the following days, all the major corporations were in a state of panic. In their words, Madman Chu was a bandit who had come to rob them. He was like a swarm of locusts with his mutant beast. This time, they were very gentle. They didn't attack the corporations and kill people like before. Instead, they politely borrowed the items in the treasury. But they were even more despicable. Unexpectedly, a few of these rare items had been fished up. This made Chu Feng feel as if he had obtained a priceless treasure. What made Chu Feng feel regretful was that he couldn't find the location of the Baji school or the 8 trigram school. He still wanted to exchange pointers with those two 130-year-old boxing masters. The locusts are here. Everyone, quickly move the treasury. That bastard Chu Feng has stolen the Heavenly Master's manual that our Archaic Alliance found. How hateful! The Archaic Alliance was furious and wanted to cough up blood. Chu Feng had attacked them last time and now he was doing it again. How hateful! Our extraterrestrial civilization has a bundle of white jade bamboo slip. That's a mythological atlas. Why didn't you guys tell us earlier? We could have prepared for it in advance. Chu Feng's group was moving about frantically like a swarm of locusts. They wanted to refine medicine and improve themselves so that they could evolve rapidly. Yellow Cattle, what else are we missing? We're missing the most crucial lightning-struck wood. It's best if it's a 1,000-year-old peach tree that survived after being struck by lightning. Of course, other mutant trees that have been struck by lightning are also fine. Yellow Cattle informed them that this kind of lightning-struck wood didn't die even after being struck by lightning. It contained a strand of innate vitality, and was extremely valuable for refining medicine. It would definitely be able to guarantee the success of the pill. However, they didn't find it even after ransacking a few clans. Not long after, the dragon lady sent someone to deliver a letter, informing Chu Feng that there was lightning-struck wood in the eastern seas. He could obtain as much as he wanted because a large portion of the true dragon's lair was constructed with lightning-struck wood. Chu Feng was instantly stunned when he heard this. The lair of a true dragon was constructed with lightning-struck wood? In outer space, everything was dark. At this moment, in the universe very far away from Earth, a metallic luster could be seen. The luster was ice-cold and deep. That was a battleship. Boom! It opened fire and a planet in front of it was directly destroyed. The silence was broken as terrifying auras appeared in the starry space. One could see that behind the gigantic battleship, countless battleships could be seen. They were so densely packed that they almost enveloped the entire starry space. Not long after another spatial jump, they exited from the wormhole and neared the solar system. Their target was Earth. This was destined to cause a huge storm. For the fastest fault-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 384. Chu Feng's group visited along the way and obtained a bountiful harvest. But in the end, they didn't find the thunderstruck wood. Should they go to the eastern sea? He felt that it wasn't too safe to go to the sea at this stage. Some of the overlords in the sea were even stronger than those on land. They had more secrets, such as flying saucers and the fallen cube. Additionally, the current evolved beings, such as the Southern Sea Elder Dragon King, had already severed his sixth shackle. He was bound to be even stronger. The strength of an old flood serpent who had lived for over 1,000 years was unfathomable. Additionally, the Southern Sea Elder Dragon King and the other overlords had been searching for the dragonification fruit and the sea god fruit. Their strength would advance by leaps and bounds once they obtained them. Apart from them, the marine race would surely have other hidden experts. We indeed have to be careful. The sea is deep and boundless. There are bound to be many strange things and experts. The black yak and the others nodded cautiously. In truth, what Chu Feng was most worried about was whether or not there would be beings from the outer realms descending into the sea 22 years ago. There were boundless resources at the bottom of the sea, and those beings would most likely be even more terrifying. Since there were descenders on land, there would most likely be experts in the sea as well. In outer space, near a satellite orbiting the Earth, a golden-haired man with a pair of snow-white divine wings, a beautiful woman in a long purple dress, and three beings in black armor that looked like demonic gods stood together, not far from each other. At this moment, they were discussing how to descend to the Earth together. The guide had long since told them the details. The death of the extraterrestrial tiger had provoked the blonde man and the others. A native had killed and eaten the tiger without the slightest scruple. Descend and kill Chu Feng. This was their decision. Although they hadn't appeared on Earth yet, they already knew who Chu Feng was and some of his past matters. The Dark Rock King's words were quite true. He was the weakest among the extraterrestrials, and the ones behind him were all at higher evolutionary levels. The extraterrestrial tiger was the second weakest, followed by the purple-dressed beauty and the blonde man. Naturally, the three demonic godlike beings were also extremely powerful and unfathomable. Very quickly, some bad news reached the surface. A few extraterrestrials did not hide it and expressed their disgust for Chu Feng, claiming that whoever dared to start a war against Chu Feng would obtain their friendship. The extraterrestrial expert had spoken, calling for people to kill Chu Feng. This was very sudden and shocking. Oh, it seems Demon King Chu has infuriated those people to such an extent that their reaction is so intense. They actually summoned the people of Earth to kill him. Is this going to work? It was just to drive a wedge between some organizations and Chu Feng, so that people would not dare to be too close to Chu Feng. However, Who would really dare to make a move against Madman Chu? In my opinion, none of them would dare. Some people communicated and expressed their opinions. It was clear that after the news spread, every place could not remain calm. There were a total of 5 life forms in outer space that made a statement, threatening to kill Chu Feng. This was a major incident. Even though Chu Feng was powerful and brave enough to kill 2 extraterrestrials, people still didn't have a good opinion of him. Everyone knew that the extraterrestrials would appear continuously in the future. If they were to all become enemies, Chu Feng would undoubtedly die even if he was 10 times more powerful than he was now. I think it's only these extraterrestrials who are at odds with Chu Feng. The other life forms that appear in the future won't necessarily clash with him. You're wrong. Even if they come from different star domains, they're still outsiders. They won't tolerate the natives in their eyes committing treason and killing their people. They'll definitely punish them as a warning to the others. At present, many people had different opinions. They felt that Chu Feng was very powerful and had heaven-bestowed talents. However, it was hard to say what his future held. The matter was fermenting. There were even TV programs that invited famous evolved beings to discuss this matter. This caused quite a stir. All in all, Chu Feng is very powerful and has great potential. However, he's going to face a large number of extraterrestrials. Who knows how many will descend? Some so-called famous evolved beings and experts felt that Chu Feng was standing at the heart of the struggle. This was very disadvantageous to him. Even if he managed to survive this time, there would be other extraterrestrials who would use him to establish their might. As for Demon King Chu, he could be considered a world-class celebrity. Very few people didn't know of him. This kind of talk program triggered a great discussion. Our infernal society is willing to follow in the extraterrestrials' footsteps and kill Chu Feng. On this day, an organization announced that they were going to suppress Chu Feng and stand together with the extraterrestrials. This caused an uproar. Was there really someone who wanted to take action against Chu Feng? This so-called infernal society was an organization in the Western Hemisphere. They were half dark and half terrifying and had always been mysterious. Their strength had increased greatly after the upheavals. This kind of declaration naturally caused a huge uproar. Many people condemned them. A dark organization that often carried out terrorist activities in the past has now defected to the aliens. How shameless can they be? Those who liked Chu Feng naturally loathed them and spoke fiercely. There were traitors in the past and now there are traitors from Earth. These people should be drowned in a pig cage and shot 100 times over. These are dregs that oppose humanity as a whole. They should all be beaten to death. Too shameless. They're defecting to the extraterrestrials and attacking their own people. This infernal society should go to hell. Many people spoke up to rebuke and express their anger towards this dark organization. Of course, there were also people who supported them. The Infernal Society also held a press conference to explain their point of view. They said that they couldn't stand Chu Feng's lawlessness and overbearingness. For the sake of peace and order, a lunatic like Chu Feng who kills at the slightest provocation should be eradicated and annihilated. When people heard these words, some were astonished, some were furious, and some wanted to laugh. Is this member of the Infernal Society doing crosstalk? Damn you, aren't you just another name for terror? In the past, you often caused chaos and killed many people. Now you have the nerve to denounce Chu Feng? Some people were quite angry. In truth, Chu Feng's group wanted to take action immediately after hearing the news. They wanted to uproot the Infernal Society and kill the chicken to warn the monkey. Unfortunately, this organization had undergone decades of baptism and was well organized. They had always been active in the darkness and hidden in the underground world. Outsiders couldn't find them. We are full of goodwill and have made this decision for the sake of humanity. We will suppress Chu Feng and welcome the extraterrestrials. Think about it, The arrival of extraterrestrials will bring with them the spark of an advanced civilization. For the sake of Earth and our world's nirvana, we need to accept them and not reject them. Yellow Cattle sighed. They're traitors, yet they can speak so righteously and gloriously. This terrifying organization has improved. Chu Feng couldn't laugh. His expression was gloomy because the Infernal Society had announced that they were about to take action and kill the people around Chu Feng. "You're courting death," Chu Feng muttered. He had just enjoyed a few days of comfort, but now they weren't at peace. He was furious, and these people had crossed his bottom line. Following which, another organization called the Blood Demons announced that they would also take action and follow in the extraterrestrials' footsteps. They wanted to kill Chu Feng and bring in an advanced civilization for Earth. Everyone understood that these were the organizations that had led the way earlier. However, no one took action despite their fierce words. They were only expressing their stance. Very good. Civilization knows no borders and transcends races. Wait for us to descend and bring the spark of an advanced civilization to build a new home for Earth, an extraterrestrial replied from outer space. How disgusting! I'm getting goosebumps all over my body, the black yak cried out. He felt that these people's words were too disgusting. Let's fight. I want to see your actions. Who dares to attack Chu Feng and the people around him? The golden-haired man in outer space urged. According to reason, he felt it was beneath his dignity to kill Chu Feng after descending. However, he found it quite interesting to see some organizations pledging allegiance to him. He hated Chu Feng to the core, but at the same time, he had no lack of bad taste. That was why he supported these dark organizations. Whoever can kill Chu Feng or his friends, I'll cleanse his marrow and help him evolve. I'll also bestow upon him a high-level evolutionary inheritance from the depths of the cosmos. Toward the end, some of the entities in orbit began to urge those organizations to cause trouble for Chu Feng. Meanwhile, they themselves were preparing to descend. They hoped that the ground would be a bit more chaotic. Then, they would descend without being disturbed. In the end, the Infernal and Blood Demons really did send people into the Eastern Territories. They wanted to take appropriate actions to show the extraterrestrials, but the results were terrifying. Only one person from the Infernal Society managed to escape. He was extremely terrified. This is too terrifying. We've just entered the East when we were captured alive by the mine owner and sent to dig underground. There's no daylight there. This is too inhumane. I object. Who said we're a terrorist organization? The mine owner is. The outside world was in a daze. Although they all knew that certain industries in the East were unfathomable, it was still shocking to see a member of a dark organization act in such a manner. I object seriously. This is too inhumane. Some of the mine owners in the East are dangerous. They're the true terrorist organizations. The Infernal and Blood Demons were actually protesting and negotiating. Many people were speechless. Without a doubt, this was Lu Tong's doing. He was about to leave the Hollow Jade Temple, and was using his current authority to help Chu Feng deal with some fleas. Chu Feng was dumbfounded after hearing this. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At the same time, the Dragoness had come to personally invite him to explore the true dragon's lair in the Eastern Sea. She told him that there was an unlimited supply of thunderstruck wood there. At first, Chu Feng had directly refused because he wasn't ready. He wasn't strong enough and the time wasn't right. However, he changed his mind after seeing the Dragoness flying machine. It was a flying saucer with extreme speed. After asking, Chu Feng understood that the Dragoness had come directly from the Eastern Sea. She was piloting the flying saucer she had obtained from the ruins at the bottom of the sea. It could be said that she was as fast as lightning. How's the weapon system? Chu Feng's eyes lit up. It's very powerful. Even shackled realm entities would find it difficult to survive an attack from it, the Dragoness replied. Chu Feng's eyes immediately lit up. He told the dragoness that it wasn't a problem for him to help her explore the true dragon's lair, but he had to borrow her flying saucer first. Sure, no problem. But can I ask what you want to do? The dragoness was curious. Deal with those extraterrestrials in space. Chu Feng replied. The dragoness' mouth was wide open as though she had seen a ghost. He wanted to fight in space. On this day, Lu Tong contacted Chu Feng urgently and told him that the extraterrestrials were descending together. 5 experts were diving toward Earth at the same time. Chu Feng, you're dead for sure. At first, everything went smoothly. The golden-haired man unfurled his snow-white wings and approached Earth. His eyes lit up as he swore to kill Chu Feng's group as soon as he successfully descended. A bastard native actually dares to kill the Dark Rock King and eat the Tiger King? You're truly courting death. It was hard to imagine that the purple-robed beauty would be so fierce as to say such words. As for the 3 demonic godlike entities, they were standing on meteorites, erupting with terrifying auras as they descended toward Earth. Chu Feng, I'm about to leave the Hollow Jade Temple. Before leaving, I'll give you a big gift. Lu Tong told Chu Feng to pay attention to the live broadcast. In truth, the descent of the 5 extraterrestrials was captured by various countries and broadcasted live across the globe. Extraterrestrial bastards, I represent the Infernal Society to judge you. You filthy, conceited, and arrogant invaders, please receive your doomsday baptism. It was at this time that a masked person from the Infernal Society announced the news. Boom! Before long, a number of supersonic missiles whistled through the air from the Western Hemisphere. They took to the skies and were about to bombard the 5 extraterrestrials. It wasn't us who fired them. The Infernal Society was stunned at first, but then they panicked and didn't know what to do. My blood demon organization will also kill these extraterrestrial bastards. Those who offend Earth will be killed no matter how far away they are. Everyone was dumbfounded after hearing such shocking words. What was going on? Following which, they saw a number of supersonic missiles whistling through the air. At the same time, Lu Tong told Chu Feng that this was the authority the Hollow Jade Temple had stolen from overseas. The supersonic weapons that belonged to those 2 organizations had been fired by Lu Tong on their behalf. Afterward, Lu Tong left the Hollow Jade Temple. In truth, the results were miraculously good. In the end, the supersonic weapons intercepted the missiles and caused a huge explosion. No one had expected this to create such a huge problem for the extraterrestrials. That was because they had to use their own energy to resist the explosion. In the end, the mysterious runes in Earth's void intensified. Some people fell into a dangerous situation and almost died on the spot. This works too? The Infernal Society and Blood Demon Organization are truly loyal. Look, these supersonic weapons are very useful. They might be able to kill the extraterrestrials. Everyone watching the live broadcast was dumbfounded. Afterward, many people began to praise the extraterrestrials. Loyal my ass. Damn you. At this time, the Infernal Society and Blood Demon Organization were on the verge of tears. They wanted to explain that this wasn't their doing. Chapter 385. The whole world was watching this live broadcast. The extraterrestrials had arrived, and there were 5 of them at once. Moreover, each of them was stronger than the previous Dark Rock King and the multicolored tiger. Now they had descended together. It was fine if they failed, but who knew what would happen if they succeeded? At first, many people were apprehensive and terrified. Naturally, the secret guides were incomparably excited. If the 5 extraterrestrials succeeded, their status would rise with the tide, and they would become extraterrestrial agents. However, the result of what happened before their eyes was flabbergasting and out of everyone's expectations. High up in the sky, a creature covered in black metal armor was standing on a meteorite. At first, he was like a demonic god looking down on the earth. but now, he was screaming miserably. Those supersonic missiles had already exploded just now, but no one had expected the aftermath to be even more terrifying. The violent explosion couldn't injure the extraterrestrials. They were extremely powerful and didn't fear firearms. However, the energy in the sky was too intense. It caused various patterns to appear in the void like flowing molten iron. They were abnormally brilliant and caused terrifying consequences. This was the mysterious energy of Earth itself being drawn out. Crack! A demonic godlike extraterrestrial roared in the sky as the meteorite beneath his feet split open. Following a loud boom, the meteorite exploded and light shot into the sky. This was caused by the interweaving mysterious patterns on Earth, forming a crushing force. That extraterrestrial's body trembled as his armor was damaged. Following which, he began to cough up blood as terrifying cracks appeared on his body. That was because he had been covered by the brilliant patterns in the sky. The surging energy was currently suppressing him mercilessly. This extraterrestrial disintegrated and his armor fell apart. He was both shocked and furious as he roared in terror. However, it was useless. No matter how he struggled, he was ultimately crushed and destroyed in both body and soul. An extraterrestrial had died just like that. He wasn't killed by a missile directly, but he had died because of it. The whole world was silent. Everyone who saw this scene felt it was unreal. An extraterrestrial expert stronger than the Dark Rock King and the multicolored tiger had died just like that. The Infernal Society is domineering. The Blood Demon Society is mighty. Many people cried out loudly. As they saw it, these two dark organizations weren't careless at the critical moment. They turned around and attacked the extraterrestrials, killing a supreme expert. People felt that this was rare and commendable. Even if these two organizations did not have a good reputation in the past, they were now worthy of praise. In order to kill the aliens, they pretended to surrender to the enemy and paralyzed the alien experts. At the critical moment, they stepped forward and killed the invaders. A great chivalrous person does not care about personal reputation, and is unfazed by honor or disgrace. It can be said that only by crossing the vast ocean can a hero's true nature be revealed. In an instant, there were such exaggerated praises. Many people couldn't help but twitch the corners of their mouths when they heard this. The internet was bustling with activity. As for the Infernal Society and Blood Devil Organization's members, they had long since become stupefied. Then they began to cry. This type of praise was simply unbearable. If the aliens were to descend, wouldn't they be devoured alive? They really wanted to stomp their feet and retort. They wanted to explain seriously, but who would believe them? Calm down. You have to be calm in the face of major events. The leader of the Infernal Hell Society tried to comfort himself, but he also told his subordinates to remain calm and not panic. Let's wait and see. The higher-ups of the Blood Demon Party also ordered with a green face. The effects of the missiles had triggered a heated discussion among the people, which was beyond their expectations. Without a doubt, the upper echelons of various countries and some of the top powers had their eyes lit up. A few missiles had killed an alien. This was a result that far exceeded their expectations. Now, many people's confidence had doubled. There were many of these weapons on Earth. If they were to shed all pretense of cordiality and start a war, they would definitely be able to blast apart the alien that was rushing toward Earth. This was an unexpected joy. After this battle, the various countries felt that Earth wasn't as weak as they had imagined. Of course, there were also people who poured cold water on this. They were more pessimistic and believed that the mysterious patterns on Earth wouldn't last long and would eventually be completely erased. At the same time, there were people with ulterior motives who advised against using firearms. The aliens weren't to be trifled with, so they absolutely couldn't use force. Look, it's a flying saucer. People cried out in alarm. A silver-gray flying saucer soared into the sky and approached the area where the 4 descenders were. It then opened fire with all its might. Chu Feng had arrived. He naturally couldn't sit still after seeing the results of the missiles. He had originally wanted to take the initiative to attack with the flying saucer, but now he was even more excited. If he could take advantage of this opportunity to get rid of these people, that would truly be a pleasant surprise. Your provocation will lead to an intense collision between 2 civilizations. You won't be able to bear the consequences. You will become the sinner of Earth. The golden-haired man spoke. At the same time, he used his spirit to transmit his voice, which could travel even further and surpass the speed of sound. How disgusting and hypocritical! Can you represent a civilization? How can you even utter such threats? Wait until you can descend alive before saying that. Chu Feng was disdainful. Boom! At the same time, a beam of energy shot out from the flying saucer. It was like a sharp and resplendent divine spear as it flew toward the golden-haired man. Chi! The golden-haired man evaded. With the divine wings on his back, his spiritual senses were extremely sharp and could warn in advance. At this moment, his eyes were eerie as he stared at the flying saucer and shouted once again, "Stop! Do you want to provoke a terrifying collision between 2 civilizations? We came with sincerity not to conquer Earth, but to spread the flames of an even more advanced civilization. We view this place as our home." After hearing this, Chu Feng was extremely unhappy and berated with a heavy tone. Earth used to be ranked 11th in the cosmos. From the perspective of evolution, we used to look down on extraterrestrials of your level. What right do you have to say you're bringing the flames of an even more advanced civilization? You're clearly here to loot and seize the various remains left behind from ancient times to promote the evolution and prosperity of your respective planet. You bunch of disgusting bandits, don't flatter yourself too much when you open your mouth. It will only make people want to vomit and feel disgusted. When these words were spoken, the extraterrestrials in the sky were both shocked and furious. From their point of view, Earth had already declined. It was indeed incomparably glorious in the past and intimidated myriad realms, but those creatures who had created Earth's resplendent era had all been killed off. This place had fallen into the decline and the natives of this planet were nothing. Even if there were descendants of those people, their bloodlines had long since become mottled and impure. You of mixed blood dare to speak to us like this. When we descend in a while, we'll definitely make you distinguish right from wrong and reflect on your actions. You'll wish you were dead. The lady in the purple dress spoke. Her skin was snow-white and her appearance was beautiful. She was indeed a beauty, but her words were rather excessive. Her attitude was excessively arrogant. When she mentioned the current races on Earth, she was full of disdain and didn't view them as equals at all. The expressions of the people on the global live broadcast changed after hearing these words. They were filled with anger and sullenness because they could feel the attitude of the extraterrestrials. What was that? They were high and mighty, looking down on the creatures on Earth, as if they were looking down on inferior races. This was too excessive and humiliating. It's Chu Feng. Why is he flying a flying saucer? Many people had already recognized Chu Feng's voice and were astonished. Chu Feng, get rid of them. This extraterrestrial bitch is too disgusting. What do they have to be conceited about? Back in the day, our Earth was ranked 11th and was enough to look down on them. At that time, they were probably still a barbaric planet. Now they're invading us and are still so arrogant. Destroy them. Many people were shouting and waving their fists at the screen. They were all furious. Although they knew that their roars couldn't reach the sky and that Chu Feng couldn't hear them, they still expressed the indignation and sullenness in their hearts. Chu Feng spoke once again. During the Earth's glorious era, your planet was mostly a primitive tribe. Now you've come to seek a sense of existence. You're acting like a nouveau riche. This is enough to show that you're lacking in confidence. This is the embodiment of a guilty conscience. Apparently, he, who usually had a cheap mouth, was now being stabbed in the heart by the extraterrestrials. You'll die without a doubt. The slender body of the purple-dressed woman trembled as she pointed at the flying saucer. Her snow-white face was somewhat distorted as she gnashed her teeth. Native, you deserve to die. The golden-haired man spread his snow-white wings and shouted. Now they were somewhat relieved because they had already passed through the most dangerous area and weren't too far from the ground. Boom! Boundless energy beams responded to them. Chu Feng had been firing all along, but the extraterrestrials had learned their lesson and were now using all kinds of trump cards to defend themselves. They had secret weapons on them which could automatically draw energy without needing to be activated to help them block the calamity. The mysterious patterns on Earth appeared once again and interweaved together to crush the enemy. Doubtlessly, these secret weapons had diverted the majority of the energy attack. Extraterrestrials, you're too weak. You're dead for sure. Chu Feng frantically pressed the buttons on the flying saucer's weapon system without any regard for the cost. The dragoness almost died from heartache. This was an energy source that couldn't be regenerated. This flying saucer was dug out by the marine race from some ruins. Although it could be controlled, it couldn't be effectively replenished. Boom, 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 the air boiled and all kinds of energy beams interweaved, causing the Earth's protective runes to continuously recover. It was originally aimed at creatures from other star regions, but now it was even more terrifying. Black Boss Toad, you guys control it. I'll go out and take care of them. Chu Feng didn't feel satisfied and wanted nothing more than to kill these extraterrestrials. He called for the golden condor and actually left the flying saucer with his Buddhist staff in hand. The remaining 4 extraterrestrials in the air were in a dangerous situation. They had never imagined that they would provoke such trouble just as they were about to land on Earth. Creatures far inferior to them actually dared to attack them. Boom! A silver arc of lightning appeared in the air and struck the golden-haired man, causing him to stagger back. His body was almost pierced through. This was a warning sign that he might encounter a calamity. Following which, an expert standing on a meteorite roared furiously. His strength was too high and he encountered an even fiercer obstruction from Earth. A series of patterns enveloped him and almost tore him into pieces. Extraterrestrials, your Grandpa Chu is here. Die! Chu Feng shouted loudly. He held the Buddhist staff in his hand and circulated the thunderous breathing technique. His expression was solemn and dignified as he waved it out with all his might. A golden-bodied old Buddha appeared in the air and chanted sutras. Then, he suddenly slapped forward with a gigantic palm that blotted out the sun. Boom! This place immediately boiled over and Buddhist light illuminated everything, causing a great disturbance. In truth, this kind of attack was even more effective than firearms. It triggered an even more astonishing defensive power from Earth against the outsiders. In front, the Buddhist race's special energy spread out and caused countless patterns to light up. The mysterious power of Earth was awakening to kill the enemy. Crack! Some of the extraterrestrials' secret weapons were shattered. Ah no! The lady in purple screamed. She was in a sorry state after being crushed by the mysterious power. She coughed up large mouthfuls of blood and her hair was disheveled for a moment. Boom! Lightning exploded near the golden-haired man. One of his arms had been severed and directly disappeared from his body. He was drenched in blood. Ah! He roared and stared at Chu Feng with awe-inspiring eyes. However, they didn't dare to launch a terrifying attack because the more powerful the energy they released, the greater the backlash from the Earth. Haha! You nouveau riche want to come to Earth to show off your might. This is the result. Run naked. Chu Feng laughed loudly. The black and white grinding stone within his body could frantically absorb energy to replenish his need. Even though the attack just now had consumed a great deal of energy, it was quickly replenished. It could be said that the black and white grinding stone was heaven-defying. This kind of item would make people's eyes red even in the outer realms and the starry seas. It was impossible to pass it down unless the top-grade orthodoxies had produced bodhisattvas and demonic sages. Boom! Chu Feng brandished the Buddhist staff once again and attacked frantically. The lady cried out in alarm. She fled in a sorry state and tried every means to evade, but to no avail. One of her legs was enveloped by the Buddhist light and suffered serious injuries. Following which, the patterns on earth extended and, with a puff, severed her slender legs like a heavenly blade. Blood sprayed down. No. I hate you. She was on the verge of despair because reality was too cruel. It was completely different from what she had imagined. She thought she could rule over Earth and open up all kinds of ruins. Then, she would evolve rapidly and obtain the opportunity to become a sage ancestor. But now, it seemed she was nothing. Her fate was quite pitiful. Don't attack again. We can sit down and talk, she screamed. It's better if you talk with the Dark Rock King and the others, Chu Feng said coldly and waved the Buddhist staff once again. This time, the greater half of the lady's body disappeared. The energy from the earth had been drawn over and covered her. She screamed miserably and struggled with all her might. But it was useless. Her entire body exploded and turned into a bloody mist. She was filled with regret and boundless terror as her body and soul were destroyed. The two demonic godlike figures also disintegrated and perished in the void. Following which, the golden-haired man screamed, struggled, and roared. He was already terrified and couldn't resist at all. The mysterious patterns on earth were destroying everything. In the end, he let out a mournful howl as he watched his body break apart inch by inch and turn into a bloody mist in the void. He was in complete despair. He also died miserably and was covered in blood. Chu Feng retracted his hand and said, "Extraterrestrials are too weak." Chapter 386. The 5 extraterrestrials were all dead. Not a single one survived. Earth fell into a momentary silence. Many people who had personally witnessed this scene felt their mouths go dry. They were all stunned. Before this, people had guessed all kinds of possibilities, but they had never imagined that the extraterrestrials would be completely wiped out. This was a group of invincible beings that were difficult to defeat. According to people's original predictions, there would be a great upheaval on Earth. When the time came, blood would flow like rivers and many people would die. Who would have thought that Chu Feng's flying saucer would actually lead to such an outcome? The scene before their eyes was truly subversive. The 5 terrifying extraterrestrials had been wiped out before they could even get close to the Earth's surface. Even now, many people's ears were still echoing with Chu Feng's words. The extraterrestrials are too weak. These words were too domineering. No one else but Chu Feng dared to say such words. The group of people came to their senses and felt incomparably crazy. Well done. Those extraterrestrials were arrogant and conceited. They looked down on the Earthlings as if they were inferior races. They hadn't even descended yet and already wanted to kill this and that. They treated the natives with disdain. They only have themselves to blame for this outcome. Almighty Immortal Chu. To be able to kill these extraterrestrials like this is truly satisfying and satisfying. Everyone was boiling with excitement. In truth, the 5 extraterrestrials were all extremely powerful. One was like a demonic god and actually descended from a meteorite hundreds of meters in diameter. Another was like an angel in Western mythology with a pair of snow-white wings on his back. To many people, these were gods. However, the final result was that they all died in Chu Feng's hands. The entire world's attention was focused on this battle. At this moment, everyone was dumbfounded. The 5 experts who had arrived with overbearing momentum had their lives reap. It was somewhat unreal. All the major corporations were shocked out of their wit. This demon King Chu was truly crazy. He had flown a flying saucer into space and taken the initiative to kill the extraterrestrials. Which ordinary person would dare do such a thing? They felt that this was a madman who simply couldn't be provoked. These extraterrestrials were all killed just because they threatened him. At this moment, all the major corporations' expressions changed at the mention of Chu Feng. They felt that they absolutely couldn't afford to provoke Chu Feng in the future. This fellow was too bold and extremely dangerous. Boss, are you trying to defy the heavens? Xiong Kuan, Hu Xing, Du Huijin, and Ouyang Qing were all dumbfounded. On Mount Putuo, Jiang Luoshan also felt that everything was unreal. Her bright red lips formed an O shape. Her face was filled with shock and disbelief. An old man on Mount Patala was all smiles. Hero Luoshan, you aren't young anymore. You've even shared a pillow with Chu Feng before. Why don't you consider him? I feel that this young man is a bit demonic. He hasn't fallen even after 100 battles. If you don't seize him now, who knows if there won't be another chance in the future? Jiang Luoshan rolled her eyes. I'm not even 23 yet. How am I old? In Shuntian, the masters of the Hollow Jade Temple and the Eight Visions Temple were silent after witnessing the battle. The Infernal Society and the Blood Demon Society immediately issued a statement, saying that they had made their choice and would always stand on Chu Feng's side. This was because the upper echelon members of these two organizations were terrified out of their wit. Even the extraterrestrials had been defeated. If they dared to take any chances, they would probably die without a burial ground. At the North Pole, the people of the Origin Magnetic Immortal Cave were in a complicated mood. Some had dark expressions while others were shocked. They were also extraterrestrials. After hearing Chu Feng's last words, their feelings were indescribable. They viewed the descenders who came later as competitors, but when they saw them die tragically, they also felt a sense of sympathy for them. Fortunately, we descended early. If you want to fight us, you'll have to rely on your own abilities. There's nothing to worry about, someone said. Princess Lin was in a peculiar mood. She had never imagined that news about Chu Feng would be so explosive. This person simply wouldn't stop until he shocked everyone to death. When she thought of the bet with Chu Feng, her mind was in a mess. She quickly calmed her emotions and muttered to herself, "The heavens' prides from the outer realms, the divine sons from all over, and even the princes of the ancient imperial dynasties are about to arrive. Let's see if he can continue to defy the heavens." Following which, she shook her head. The young heavens' prides from some planets were simply heaven's chosen ones. They were ridiculously powerful, and even her father's generation was considering joining the orthodoxies of the top 100 planets. This Chu Feng is a bit evil. Do you guys think he'll really be able to defeat those Buddhist sons and princes in the future? This planet has declined in the end. Its fortune has been lost, and it can no longer produce such terrifying characters. Although this Chu Feng isn't bad, he can't compare to those divine sons and saintesses. The disparity is too great. This was the attitude of some people in the North Pole. Even though they were all descenders, there were differences in status. Some of the orthodoxies that had shaken the world since ancient times could be called heaven's chosen ones. Relatively speaking, how could the creatures of such a backward place, a wasteland, compare to the divine princes of those ancient planets with brilliant evolutionary civilizations? How regretful! I've broken my vows. Sigh. In the air, Chu Feng was sitting on the back of the golden condor with a disappointed and frustrated expression. What did he mean? People were still watching the live broadcast and staring at the screen. They didn't know what he was regretting or feeling. What's wrong? The black yak and the others drove the flying saucer closer and were a bit worried. Chu Feng shook his head and said, "We agreed that the divine sons would be suppressed as servants and the saintesses would be captured to warm the bed. In the end, I accidentally killed them." Everyone was speechless. This fellow was too ostentatious. Even if he wanted to put it into action, he should have said it in private. He actually said it in such a melancholy manner on a global live broadcast. Mount Lao, the famous mountain occupied by celestial biology. Linoy was originally watching the live broadcast quietly, but her face immediately darkened after hearing what he said. What kind of words were these? Brother, take it easy. The live broadcast is still going on and many people are watching you. The Black Yak reminded. Ah, you should have said so earlier. With a swoosh, Chu Feng disappeared and entered the flying saucer. Chu Feng, I want to have children with you. At this time, many young female evolvers didn't hold back and shouted at the screen. Even though they knew he couldn't hear them, they still shouted excitedly and impulsively. In any case, the impact of this battle was huge. Chu Feng's popularity soared. Before long, a flying saucer flew across the sky toward Mount Kunlun. The current Mount Kunlun belonged to the co-management region. The corporations, the Hollow Jade Temple, the Marine Race, and many other powers had representatives here. Back then, the great demons of Mount Kunlun had retreated helplessly after their realm had fallen. Now the old Lama, the Mastiff King, and the others had returned, but those people were still unwilling to leave. They had been haggling for a share of Mount Kunlun's benefits. The old Lama was very powerful and had grasped a golden Arhat-level breathing technique. He had a good temper and didn't make a big fuss even though his cultivation had reached a profound level. There was no need to mention the Mastiff King. He was one of the first experts with 6 severed shackles and now, he was even more powerful. The great demons of Mount Kunlun didn't chase them away. This caused those people to hold on to a wishful thinking and hope to divide up some territory. They were unwilling to leave. However, the deadlock had been broken. Many people were flustered and prepared to leave immediately. Run. What's the matter? Chu Feng has arrived. It's said that he wants to kill everyone who refuses to leave. Mount Kunlun was in chaos. The peace had been broken and the deadlock had been broken. Chu Feng saw a group of fleeing figures after emerging from the flying saucer. He was puzzled and puzzled. Everyone, why are you running? Why don't you sit down and have a chat? He shouted from behind. Run. Demon King Chu is going to massacre us. He wants to wash us in blood. Run. The group of people had gone mad and were running for their lives. They hated themselves for being born with a pair of legs. All of them ran as fast as lightning as though they were in a rush to reincarnate. Many people were pale and frightened out of their wits. The Mastiff King, the Horse King, the Snow Leopard King, the Spider Demon, and the Weaver King walked out from the mountains. Brother Chu's name is indeed useful. He's just revealed himself and these people immediately ran away, abandoning Mount Kunlun's benefits. He's really mighty. In truth, many people felt that Chu Feng could be used as a god of plague. Just by standing there, he could create a silent street. With a swoosh, the group of great demons of Mount Kunlun surrounded him. They were exceptionally affectionate as they met. This was a friendship born from going through trials and tribulations together. Brother Chu Feng is becoming more and more powerful. His name has shaken the world and he even killed extraterrestrials. How delightful! After so many days, the group of great demons had made great progress. Many of them had evolved to a higher level, but none of them could sever their 7th shackle. The old Lama was very powerful, but even he couldn't take that step. That was because the pollen and fruits on the continent could only help creatures reach the 6th shackle realm. The Elder Lion King looked at Chu Feng with a complicated expression. He had been subdued and became a member of Mount Kunlun, serving as the old Lama's mount. Back then, the Elder Lion King was invincible during the war between the East and West. He had never imagined that Chu Feng would be so powerful today. The place was bustling with noise and excitement. Mount Kunlun was once again under the control of the great demons. What was even rarer was that Chu Feng had also returned. They were celebrating. Chu Feng finally saw the Horse King's daughter. She was 2 meters tall. The Horse King's bald head was shining as he dragged his daughter through the crowd in search of Chu Feng. Chu Feng was so frightened that he turned tail and ran away. "Brother, why are you running? I think the Horse King's daughter is very beautiful. I can't help but feel pity for her," the black yak shouted from behind. The Horse King's ears were very sharp. He heard this from far away and immediately said angrily, "Old Black, what do you mean? You want to hit on my daughter again? I'll fight it out with you. Handsome big brother Chu Feng, I want to have children with you." Chu Feng had just escaped and found some peace when a sudden voice rang out, scaring him out of his wits. He turned back just in time to see a shockingly beautiful problem lady running toward him. She was wearing smoky makeup and was exceedingly charming. "How come you're here?" Chu Feng was flabbergasted. This problem lady had actually come to Mount Kunlun. Where was the old Taoist? He reckoned he wasn't far away. "My grandfather wants to enter the home of myriad gods. We've been here for many days. Handsome big brother Chu Feng, I really missed you." The rebellious girl's large eyes fluttered about in a rather charming manner. Chu Feng was shocked out of his wits. Although this girl was excessively mature and rarely beautiful, she was actually only 12 or 13 years old. She was far from being an adult. He really felt a bit guilty. He was with the old Taoist's granddaughter behind his back. If he were to be discovered by that old fellow, there would definitely be pandemonium. Especially since this girl was too bold. She even dared to talk about having children with a monkey. If the old Taoist were to hear this, who knew what kind of misunderstanding he would have? Suddenly, Chu Feng heard the old Taoist's soft rebuke and the toad's curses. "You ox-nose, old bastard, black dog spirit, don't you know who I am? I'm the former master of Mount Kunlun, the younger brother of the immortal sister. How dare you behave atrociously in front of me? Io, damned old Taoist, you really dare to hit me? This grandpa will fight it out with you." In the distance there was a huge commotion. When Chu Feng rushed over, he saw that Toad Ouyang Feng's face was swollen and bruised. It had been beaten up badly, but it refused to accept it. It was cursing the old Taoist loudly, angering the old Taoist so much that his face was as black as the bottom of a pot. "Ox-nose, why don't you try hitting me again? Damn, you're really hitting me? Damn your grandpa, if you dare to touch me again, I'll let that silver devil King Chu Feng hook up with your granddaughter. This grandpa is in so much pain. Where did this wild Taoist come from? How can he be so powerful?" The toad had been beaten up miserably, but it refused to surrender verbally. When the Taoist turned around, he happened to see his granddaughter walking over with Chu Feng in tow. His face, as black as the bottom of a pot, immediately turned green as he said furiously, "Brat, you're really hooking up with my granddaughter." This toad was right. Chu Feng felt that he had been wronged. "Taoist, how have you been?" Chu Feng tried to curry favor with him. "I haven't seen you for a while, but you've become more and more immortal." "Immortal my A*s. This damned old Taoist is simply an old ruffian. He's not a good person just now," said the toad. Bang, bang, bang! Ouyang Feng let out a blood-curdling screech as he was sent flying. Early the next morning, a flying saucer soared through the sky. Chu Feng had promised the dragoness to go to the true dragon's lair in the Eastern Sea. Yellow Cattle, the Manchurian Tiger, the old donkey, the golden eagle, and the black yak also accompanied him. Of course, Ouyang Feng couldn't be missed. In addition, the toad had used Chu Feng's name to invite the problem lady onto the flying saucer, and took her away. He was taking revenge on the old Taoist because he hadn't brought him along. Moreover, the toad had left him a letter, telling him to wait to become a great-grandfather. Chapter 387. Mount Lao was one of the birthplaces of Taoism. It was adjacent to the sea and could sit and watch the raging waves beat against the shore, the ebb and flow of the ocean. In ancient times, it was also known as Prison Mountain or Lao Mountain. It was the highest peak along the coastline of ancient China and was known as the most famous mountain in the sea. As early as the Qin dynasty, a group of alchemists had been researching the art of longevity here. Additionally, there was a record that King Fuchai had ascended Mount Lao and obtained the scripture of expiation. In the distance, the white waves were beating against the cliffs and the blue sea was surging on a magnificent scale. The green pines and cypresses on the mountain were fresh and tender, as if they were carved from jade. They were accompanied by white mist, and the dense energy particles here were a typical spirit realm scenic spot. After the upheavals, Mount Lao had become even more extraordinary. The plants on the mountain were all glowing with spirituality. Be it the beautiful purple flowers or the emerald green wisteria, they were all filled with spirituality. Now, this place had become a holy land of celestial biology. The Taoist temples were simple and unadorned. There were dozens of them distributed in different areas and suffused with white mist. It looked like a fairyland with a faintly discernible feeling. On some of the spiritual peaks, thousand-year-old Taoist temples were faintly discernible, accompanied by green pines, white mist, and silver waterfalls. Some white cranes danced and circled around the different spiritual peaks, making this area look more and more like an immortal residence. On a certain cliff, in front of an unremarkable Taoist temple, an old pine tree wriggled like a young dragon. There weren't many pine needles, but they were filled with dense vitality. This ancient pine tree was entirely silvery white. This was one of its miraculous aspects. Its pine nuts possessed astonishing effects. It was currently the #1 tree on Mount Lao and could help people sever their sixth shackle. On a distant spiritual peak, people were chatting and gazing over. All of them were the upper echelons of celestial biology. On the cliffs, the ancient silver pine tree was vigorous and vigorous. Its cracked bark was similarly silvery white. Linoi stood elegantly under the tree. Her fine black hair was flowing in the wind and each strand was sparkling and translucent. Her face was exquisite and flawless as she gazed at the boundless blue waves of the ocean. Her heart was also filled with great waves. "Naoi, it's time to make a decision." A middle-aged woman in her 30s walked over. She had a beautiful face and a pair of deep and profound eyes. She was dressed fashionably in modern clothing. However, she had an ancient hairstyle with a golden hairpin in between her hair. Sparkling and translucent beads hung down from it, as well as all kinds of other hair accessories, all of them sparkling and dazzling. That person is extremely talented and has a great background. He comes from a dynasty of evolvers. This type of Tao can be said to be exceptionally terrifying. Its accumulation is extremely deep, with tens of millions of years of foundation, overlooking a region of the starry skies. It can be said to be a colossus, said the middle-aged beauty. She arrived 22 years ago, but she did not sleep in the North Pole. Instead, she lived in another place. She was one of the backers of celestial biology. There were aliens lurking near the Origin Magnetic Immortal Cave and the Chilant's Nest. A man walked out of the small Taoist temple. From the outside, he looked to be only 27 or 28 years old. He was very handsome, and there was a dark red pattern between his eyebrows. He had a bewitching aura. He also came to the silver pine tree in front of the cliff and looked at the magnificent blue sea. Naoi, that genius from the dynasty of evolvers, is in the depths of the folded space on Mount Lao. As long as you bring him here, this world will be yours, said the handsome man. The dark red pattern between his eyebrows was sparkling and translucent. Not far out, the old woman whose body was half burned was extremely respectful and quiet, standing guard at the side. She was only the servant of the handsome man and beautiful middle-aged woman. This planet was once ranked frighteningly high in the cosmos. Even though it has declined, There are still all kinds of holy objects glowing in the gravel and lying in disarray among the ruins. Many years ago, we discovered an energy pagoda in your body. This is your fortune, and no one can take it out. Now you can use it as a bridge to connect the folded space and construct a safe passage. The prince of the dynasty of evolvers is peerless in his generation and can be called the Heaven's Chosen. You are also the Heaven's Chosen woman. Bring him here. Only he is worthy of you. You two are a perfect match. This planet that was once ranked 11th in the cosmos will become the place where the two of you rise to power. Naoi, make a decision quickly. The man and woman had solemn expressions as they earnestly advised her. Amen. Linhui replied while gazing at the blue sea. Chu Feng and the others drove the flying saucer as fast as lightning. They crossed the vast skies from Kunlun and soon arrived at the shore of the Eastern Sea. That was because the Dragoness was waiting here. She didn't follow them to Kunlun. Dragoness, we've arrived. Chu Feng contacted her. The Dragoness appeared on the shore. Her blue hair was draped over her shoulders, and her smile was bright and beautiful. She was very happy that Chu Feng was able to keep his promise and come. I'll say this in advance. You have to ensure our safety, said Chu Feng. He didn't want to fight the Elder Dragon King and the others in the sea. That wasn't his home ground. You are my Eastern Sea's honored guest. The Southern Sea Dragon race won't dare to act impudently here. The Dragoness smiled to reassure them. Oh, this place is close to Mount Lao? As the flying saucer flew across the sky, Chu Feng saw the distant spiritual mountain. It was covered in rising clouds, and the density of energy there was astonishing. He thought of Linhui. Celestial biology had occupied this place. Yellow Cattle said, Mount Lao used to be home to an astonishingly powerful imperial court of evolvers. Terrifying experts often rode quasi-divine beast carriages to roam the sea of stars and visit many stars. His small face was solemn as he stared at the Mount Lao region. This was the handwritten records of the predecessors he had seen in his own world. He had done some homework and read many documents before coming to Earth. Unfortunately, he was too young at that time and the things he had grasped were limited. Chu Feng couldn't help but sigh. Earth was truly too glorious during a certain period of history. There used to be experts in great numbers, and the upper echelons of some orthodoxies had the ability to roam the sea of stars. This was simply unimaginable. The upper echelons of many evolutionary sects could roam the various star domains at will. How astonishing was this! At that time, for the powerhouses on Earth, visiting friends in other galaxies would be as easy as dropping in on someone else. Thinking back to the present, the Earth had declined into a withered wasteland. It was regrettable and lamentable. In the eyes of the extraterrestrial evolvers, the Earth had already become a barren wasteland. There was only a group of natives left here who couldn't amount to much. They had come to seize the Earth's last fortunes. One mountain, one path. It's said that some beings from the star domains will descend upon Earth through special ancient paths. How come we haven't seen such people? Asked the Black Yak. They had discussed this question on Mount Olympus back then. Manchurian Tiger was also moved. That's right, isn't there a damned god in the West? He first bewitched Schiller of the Vatican, then he created the divine sense Yamen. Later on, at Mount Zhijin in Jiangning, an oracle, Abel, appeared and was burned to death. When will the mastermind appear? Previously, we thought he wasn't very strong and would soon take the risk to break through. Now, it seems this person isn't so simple, said Yellow Cattle. The more powerful the person, the more difficult and dangerous it would be for them to descend to Earth. The resistance they would face would be terrifying. Yellow Cattle said, comparatively speaking, it's easier to descend from the starry skies. It's much more difficult to walk out from the ancient paths in the folded spaces behind the famed mountains. However, the Earth's coordinates in the cosmos had long since been forgotten by the people of the starry skies. Not many people knew about it and could only rely on some special ancient path. Doubtlessly, the Earth was once a glorious era. Too many paths had been opened and many of them were connected to the starry skies. It was a period of glorious times, but after the extreme splendor came complete darkness. The Earth was unable to recover after a setback. The most brilliant and talented predecessors of that era were all killed. Blood flowed like rivers and the entire planet was left in ruins. "We'll leave this place sooner or later," Chu Feng said from within the flying saucer. "That's right. Our beast core will enter the starry skies sooner or later," said the black yak. "It's the sage core, okay? It's the beauty core." The old Taoist's granddaughter, the problem lady, also joined in on the fun. She was all smiles. Chu Feng and the others were very curious about which galaxy she came from and kept asking her. In the end, the little girl was very tight-lipped and refused to reveal her origins. "Are you from the Alpha Galaxy?" "No, judging from your appearance, you should be from the Sagittarius Galaxy," the group teased. The dragoness reminded Chu Feng, "You've killed extraterrestrials in succession. This isn't a good thing for you." "Isn't there no other way? They came to find trouble with me, and I was only passively retaliating." Chu Feng shrugged helplessly. The flying saucer soared through the sky and left Mount Lao, entering the depths of the vast ocean. The world had undergone great changes and folded spaces were emerging in an endless stream. Even the ocean was no exception. It was 10 times longer from one place to another and its surface area was close to 100 times. The depths of the ocean were strangely tranquil. There were no raging waves or howling gales. The blue sea was like a mirror and the golden sun hung high in the sky, reflecting off the surface of the sea. "We're here," the dragoness informed the group. She was in charge of steering the flying saucer. Boom! The flying saucer landed and split open the surface of the sea, entering the depths of the ocean. "Oh my God, I don't know how to swim. Little dragoness, you'll have to take care of me in a while." The toad Ouyang Feng was fairly shameless. He was only a year old but was shamelessly addressing the dragoness as little sister. "I've never heard of a toad drowning," said the black yak. In truth, the toad's eyes were glowing with excitement. When he was born, his first form was that of a true dragon. He had even transformed into a bird before becoming a toad later on. Now that they were nearing the eastern sea and the dragon nest, he was incomparably excited. The underwater world wasn't dark at all. It was actually multicolored with all kinds of corals glowing. It was completely different from the past. They were sparkling and resplendent like clusters of torches. The dragoness smiled and told them that this was a good source of light. Chu Feng and the others revealed astonished expressions. This was the first time they had entered the ocean after the great changes. The scenery they saw was simply too beautiful. With the corals as the light source, the sea below was extremely resplendent. They saw houses made of seashells and temples made of fish bones. They were as white as jade, divine and flawless. They revealed odd expressions from time to time. There were too many races at the bottom of the ocean. Along the way, they saw many creatures they had never seen or heard of. All of them had residences at the bottom of the ocean. Additionally, they saw a number of mutant trees rooted on the ocean ridge. They were multicolored and bore fruits of various colors. One could tell at a glance that they were of an extraordinary species, causing one to drool with desire. However, there were sea beasts guarding these mutant trees. There were sharks hundreds of meters long, turtles the size of small mountains, humanoid monsters, and even birds with scales. Chapter 388. There was a city at the bottom of the sea. This astonished the group. They stared ahead with wide eyes. The city was vast and had a complete system. Gazing at it from afar, it was bright and resplendent. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't even notice that this was the bottom of the sea. It was like a giant city on land. That was because the seawater was transparent and the bottom of the sea was glistening. Only when one got closer would they realize how extraordinary this place was. There were coral lighthouses hundreds of meters tall, radiating bright red radiance in all directions. Within the city there were all kinds of magnificent shell buildings. They were simply magnificent works of art. As for some palaces, they were all built from coral, jade, and whale bones. They were grand, majestic, and extremely beautiful. This place could be considered the work of the gods. This was like a mythical city. The streets of the underwater city were very flat. After getting closer, they found that the city was bustling with activity. There were many shops on both sides of the street, selling all kinds of underwater goods. For example, rare materials, mutant fruits, broken weapons dug out from ruins, and even some flying saucers. The black yak, the Manchurian tiger, and the others had their horizons broadened. Was this still the bottom of the sea? Why did it feel more like a super-civilization? A flying saucer. A complete flying saucer is actually on sale in that plaza? The old donkey cried out. He glanced at Chu Feng, hinting that he wanted to buy it. There were even flying saucers for sale in this underwater city. It was indeed better than on land. It made one dizzy and envious. Chu Feng was moved. He really wanted to buy one, but he knew that this thing was too expensive. He probably couldn't afford it. The dragoness smiled. That's the eight-clawed king's item. Last time, he excavated an ancient cave residence, and there were 3 flying saucers inside. He didn't need so many himself, so he took one out to sell. What does he want in exchange? Chu Feng asked. Dragonization fruit or sea god fruit? Both are fine, the dragoness informed. Chu Feng immediately lost his temper after hearing this. Those 2 things were too rare. Not to mention him, even the marine race couldn't pick them. It was said that even the elder dragon king of the southern sea was chasing after them and fighting with them. The toad's eyes widened. Let's go rob them. Its eyes flickered as it stared at the underwater city. There were too many good things. If it could loot it, its harvest would definitely be astonishing. How? We're in the dragoness flying saucer right now. Don't tell me we're going to enter the sea and fight with someone to snatch the flying saucer away? The black yak glanced askance at him. In fact, after arriving here, he was also tempted and wanted to do something big. However, this was the bottom of the sea, not their home ground, so it was not advisable to act rashly. This was because they had waged war with the sea race, and from the bottom of their hearts, they were not opposed to plundering the sea race's resources. However, even though they could hold their breath for a long time, they were bound to be at a disadvantage if they were to fight in the sea. The dragoness reminded, the 8-clawed king is not to be trifled with. It's best if you don't save yourself some trouble. Its evolutionary level is extremely high and unfathomable. How could we do such a thing? The Manchurian tiger forced a smile and explained that he only had a grudge against the Southern Sea lineage and wouldn't cause trouble here. There were many different races in the city. Chu Feng and the others were amazed. There were sea snakes that were tens of meters long, marine humans that looked exactly like humans, sea monkeys, bronze tigers, white-shelled turtles that walked upright, and even mermaids. The bottom of the sea was brightly colored and bright. There were people from all races and many buildings. It was rare that they could all coexist in harmony. After evolution, intelligent races won't kill each other, said the dragoness. It was as if this was a mature society. They imitated the human race, but they were also different and had their own characteristics. The flying saucer slowly flew above the city and toward the street. In order to let them understand the underwater world and see this giant city clearly, the dragoness flew at a slow speed. What's that? Yellow Cattle cried out in surprise. It was naturally an extraordinary item that could make him lose his composure. There was a large shop below. The materials used to build it were exquisite. The shell of a hawksbill turtle was used as the building material, creating a large palace hall. At the same time, it faced the street and was in a good location. There were many marine race people coming and going, and all of them stopped here. "Oh, that's their shop's defining treasure, a branch of the Fusang tree," replied the dragoness. "What?" Ouyang Feng the toad jumped up. The black yak, the old donkey, and the Manchurian tiger also cried out in surprise. They stared at the scene below through the flying saucer's screen. There was a dazzling golden tree branch with vigorous vitality curling around it. It was as if it was forged from gold. "What are you waiting for? That's a branch of a divine tree. Let's go snatch it, no, I mean buy it." The problem lady clenched her fists. She tried to salvage the situation after a slip of the tongue. She was eager to give it a try, and her beautiful eyes emitted an extraordinary splendor. She wasn't any more reserved than the black yak and the toad. The dragoness informed them, "Don't waste your energy. The energy within this branch has long since been sucked dry by a toad. Now, the Fusang tree branch only looks impressive." "What? A sea toad? Where is it? I can't beat it to death," Ouyang Feng the toad said furiously. The others were speechless. This Ouyang Feng wasn't a good person even when he was so cruel to his own kind. "What are you looking at? I'm not a toad. I'm a true dragon, an ancestral rock and a qilin. My current appearance is just my appearance and not my true nature. Amen, you guys better not cause trouble. That sea toad has already evolved into a three-legged golden toad. It's very powerful and has already established itself in its own medium-sized city. It's a tyrant in the sea region, and this shop is its property in our dragon city." Everyone was speechless. Even a toad could build a city? A three-legged golden toad. If it's pure-blooded, it can also be considered a quasi-divine beast. Yellow Cattle mumbled in surprise. "Where did you get this Fusang tree branch?" asked Chu Feng. He really wanted to know how that three-legged golden toad could be so powerful. One had to know that he had heard of the Fusang tree a long time ago. Even some corporations on the continent were actively exploring the sea in order to get close to this mythical tree. But in the end, all the major powers retreated and didn't continue. The dragoness shook her head and told them that things weren't that simple. The Fusang tree had appeared several times in the sea, but it didn't appear for long each time. It was rooted on an island and was mobile. It didn't stay in one place. There was one time when a violent gale blew in the sea and the waves soared into the sky. The entire sea region was boiling and a powerful tsunami occurred. At that time, someone saw two mysterious experts fighting over the Fusang tree. But in the end, neither could do anything to the other. Moreover, they were both repelled by the divine tree's golden light. However, some of the divine tree's branches also fell off. Those two experts were unfathomable. They each took a Fusang tree branch and left, the dragoness narrated. She sighed with emotion because those two hidden experts were too astonishing. Even now, no one knew who they were or where they went in the end. The sea toad was relatively lucky. It saw a small piece of a golden branch, and thus evolved into the three-legged king. It could also be considered a tyrant. Chu Feng and the others were fascinated as they listened. There were too many opportunities in this underwater world. If they could really find the Fusang tree, they reckoned they would be able to rapidly evolve. Before long, they arrived at the center of this giant city. This was the dwelling place of the Eastern Sea dragon race. There were many magnificent buildings here. There were fish-scale castles, towers built from walrus tusks, and grand palaces built from giant shells. The buildings stretched out in a continuous chain. In addition, there were all kinds of mutant trees here. They were surrounded and became decorations in the garden. How extravagant! What am I seeing? Pearls as big as basins, one after another. The rebellious girl cried out in surprise. All women lacked immunity to those sparkling jewels and jade. But it was indeed exaggerated. The pearls were pure white and translucent. It was so beautiful that it made one's heart enchanted. However, Chu Feng and the others could only take a cursory look. They didn't leave the flying saucer because it wasn't suitable for them to swim naked in the deep sea. They could hold their breath, but it wasn't suitable for them to stay in this kind of environment for long. How regretful. I wanted to bring you guys to my house as guests. It seems a bit unrealistic now. Let's go directly to the true dragon's lair, said the dragoness. Your Highness is too polite. We're not outsiders, so there's no need to act like this, replied Chu Feng. In truth, he felt that this trip wasn't in vain. He had learned the secrets of the underwater world and witnessed the marine race's civilization. If it was in the past, he would have been completely ignorant. The dragoness said, "Wait until we find enough secret treasures and build a truly grand dragon palace. At that time, we should be able to completely isolate the seawater and form an independent space." The flying saucer soared into the sky and sped away. They arrived at their destination in a short while. The true dragon's lair was very close to the giant city. The Eastern Sea Dragon race had built this city in order to guard the ancient dragon's lair. Boom! The seawater in front of them was extremely turbulent. There was a huge whirlpool that almost swallowed the entire space. There really is a sea? Chu Feng was dumbfounded. The ancient true dragon's lair. Heavens, I've really arrived here. The problem lady cried out in alarm. However, the others were also frowning. Could they enter this place? Would it be very dangerous? Yes, we can. It's very odd inside, said the dragoness. Then, amidst the black yak and the Manchurian tiger's cries of alarm, she drove the flying saucer straight into the boundless whirlpool. The world spun around them as if they had entered a dark and chaotic cosmos. Very soon, light appeared again and the whole world became clear. Not long after entering the sea, everything was different. It was abnormally quiet and deathly still. All the winds, waves, and whirlpools had disappeared without a trace. Why do I feel something's wrong? Is this still the sea? It's clearly a different space, a different zone. The Manchurian tiger was suspicious. The dragoness nodded and told them that it was completely different after entering. The flying saucer landed on the ground. Then, the dragoness opened the cabin door and walked out. There's no seawater here. Is this land? There was only land below the sea. There was no seawater at all. This surprised them. The reddish-brown land stretched as far as the eye could see. Was this the bottom of the sea? They were suspicious. Why did it feel like an arid plateau? It's not as vast as you think. It's just that the ground isn't level and obstructs our line of sight. It looks like it's connected to the sky and is very far away. In fact, it's only a few 100 kilometers, said the dragoness. They saw the true dragon's lair after advancing for several kilometers. Immortal mist pervaded the air. There was a pitch-black lair with light streaking out from time to time, piercing through the mist. It was full of mystery. No wonder the dragoness said that there was as much thunderstruck wood as one wanted in this dragon's lair. She wasn't lying. That was because the lair was constructed there and seemed to be a pile of thunderstruck wood. The vast lair was pitch-black with many thunderstruck wood built together. This is the dragon's lair? Why do I feel like it's a giant bird's nest? The old donkey cried out strangely. The black lair looked very large with a diameter of over 10 meters. It indeed resembled a bird's nest and was completely different from what they had guessed. The thunderstruck wood was piled up and emitted lightning from time to time. The scene was astonishing. In addition, white mist pervaded the air and covered the area. Are you sure this is a dragon's lair and not a giant ancient magpie's nest? Even Chu Feng was doubtful. Was this a place where a true dragon had once lived? Legend had it that the underwater dragon palaces were resplendent in gold and jade. They were richly ornamented and looked like divine cities. However, the one before them was simply a giant bird's nest. I can accept it if you say it's a phoenix's nest, but I don't quite understand if you say it's a dragon's nest, mumbled Chu Feng. The dragoness said, According to the records of the ancient ruins we excavated, this is the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace. It's an extraordinary place that contains great fortunes. Swoosh. Chu Feng didn't say anything. His eyes suddenly became resplendent and two beams of golden light flew out. He activated the fiery eyes to see through this place. Huh! Chu Feng was stunned. After activating the fiery eyes, he saw that the dragon lair was completely different. Even the entire ocean eye area became divine and auspicious, no longer deathly silent. He was sure that this was the former site of the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace and the former True Dragon's lair. He saw the copper walls, the jade tiles, the cave residence, and the endless domain runes on the thunderstruck wood. This place had once been arranged by a domain grandmaster and was a magnificent sight. Chapter 389. The fiery eyes were known as one of the most powerful eye technique. Even in the cosmic sea, it was a top-notch ability. That was because not many creatures could activate this eye technique even in the past, and there was even less of a need to talk about it in this era. It was difficult to find even 2 or 3 of them in the various star systems. Chu Feng's eyes shone as he stared at this seemingly desolate ancient land. He looked straight at the source and immediately saw through it. He was naturally shocked. This was undoubtedly a true dragon nest, and it was even more extraordinary than he had imagined. The copper walls were mottled and engraved with the traces of time. The jade tiles were dim, and had long been covered in dust for countless years. The walls were in ruins, and even though they were constructed from divine materials, they had now collapsed. This was an expanse of ruins. In the past, it should have been extremely majestic and grand. This was indeed the dwelling place of the dragon race at the bottom of the sea. It was similar to the records of ancient legends. However, there were also differences. It wasn't the Crystal Dragon Palace, but rather an expanse of buildings. It was more like a city suffused with the aura of a deity. The thick bronze pillars towered into the sky like pillars supporting the heavens. Meanwhile, that was only a flagpole used to hang the dragon race's war flag. One could see that there was still half a piece of cloth on it. Chu Feng was shocked. This thing wasn't simple, and it could even be said that it was absolutely extraordinary. That so-called broken flag represented the dragon race's former glory. This might be a weapon. There was a lot of thunderstruck wood, and it wasn't fake. The true dragon nest was piled up in the city ruins. The city ruins were built against the mountain. There was a black hole halfway up the mountain, and there were many thunderstruck wood piled up together to form a part of the dragon cave. It was clear that the city was an important place for the dragon race. In the past, it was heavily guarded and inhabited by various tribes. However, that cave was the true residence of the true dragon. Chu Feng was bewildered. This was different from what he had imagined, and it was also different from the legends. The so-called dragon race lived in magnificent dragon palaces at the bottom of the sea. It was different from what he was seeing now. Indeed, that city was astonishing. The jade tiles and golden bricks covered the ground. It was like the residence of a deity, but the true dragon seemed to prefer the ancient cave hidden by the thunderstruck wood. There were mountains in the city and a dragon cave. This was the true scene within the Eastern Sea's eye. Soon after, Chu Feng's eyes erupted with golden light as he scanned the entire quiet land. Everything within a radius of 100 miles entered his eyes, no longer able to deceive his senses. They were indeed in the sea eye, but this place was a space of its own, isolated from the seawater, like a bright and clean divine land. But due to the existence of domains, ordinary people couldn't see the seawater above their heads. They could only see the reddish-brown earth. At the same time, Chu Feng noticed that the terrain here was different from the outside world. It could be said to be an unpredictable land of fortune. At the very least, with his current attainments in the field of domains, he couldn't completely decipher it or see through the ultimate secrets here. With his eyes of fire and gold, He could see energy particles rising from the ruins. They looked like pure white mist, but they were actually various substances that were beneficial to the human body. Generally speaking, it was a type of energy. If it was seen by ordinary people, they would say that it was immortal qi. Chu Feng suddenly understood. The so-called immortal energy was actually some rare energy particles. When they evaporated and overflowed, they were seen by the naked eye and felt that they were divine, thus obtaining this type of name. Moreover, when one was nourished by this type of energy substance, it was indeed very comfortable, allowing one to obtain many wondrous effects. "How is it?" asked the black yak. Chu Feng said, "Yes, this place is extraordinary. If used well, it can regrow flesh and bones. I feel that the Dragon Cave can be called a mortal earth, but we probably won't be able to enter." He wasn't exaggerating. This place's terrain was indeed astonishing. In the blink of an eye, he saw the extraordinary place. If one lived in the ruins all year round, one could live for many years. That was because the energy substance there was very special and was extremely beneficial to the body. So much so that he suspected that even the body of a dead person buried here wouldn't rot and would even give birth to spirituality. Chu Feng felt as if 100 claws were scratching at his heart. He really wanted to stuff the 3 seeds he had obtained from the foot of Mount Kunlun into the true Dragon Cave and see if they could be planted. At the very least, he could confirm that the first seed, which had long since been activated, could grow here. It was just that he didn't know how the second and third seeds would fare. Difficult, too difficult. This area is a forbidden area set up by a domain grandmaster. In the past, there were probably saints living here. It's simply impossible for us to go deep. Chu Feng shook his head and sighed. There must be saints here. The true dragon of the past could definitely reach that level. Yellow Cow nodded. Everyone fell into silence after hearing this. They all felt regretful that they couldn't enter this place because it was too heaven-defying. Even if we can't go deep into the Dragon Cave, we can't get close to the edge of the ruins? The Manchurian tiger didn't give up. "Let me take a look again," Chu Feng said. He really didn't have much confidence. The place where the true dragon lived was too high. It was one of the most powerful creatures from ancient times. This area had once been set up with the help of a domain grandmaster. Even though it had been mostly destroyed in battle, it was still difficult for outsiders to approach. The current Chu Feng was still quite a distance away from the domain grandmaster level. "Can you see any treasured trees in the ruins?" asked the dragoness. Although she was trying her best to calm herself down, one could still see the nervousness in her heart and the hope in her eyes. That was because she suspected that there might be dragonification fruits and peerless treasured trees in this dragon lair. "I don't see any trees." Chu Feng shook his head. The ruins were too dilapidated. The copper walls and jade tiles were all in tatters. Everything had been damaged, so how could there be any sacred trees? Even if there were any, he reckoned it would be in the ancient cave. There seemed to be a vigorous vitality there, constantly spraying out energy particles in the form of multicolored mist. The dragoness was very disappointed. "But there are grasses in the ruins, especially near the Dragon Cave. There's a large patch near the entrance," Chu Feng said. It was just that the grasses couldn't be considered too special. They were mostly dark red in color, quite simple, and didn't have any resplendent luster. One had to know that the mutant trees at the bottom of the sea were all sparkling and translucent. "Ah, that's the dragon blood grass," the dragoness cried out in surprise. Yellow Cattle was moved after hearing this. He also knew of this grass. It was a good thing for evolvers because it could improve their constitution and help them become stronger. The 8-clawed king risked his life to enter the true dragon lair and unexpectedly survived. He also obtained a dragon blood grass and rose to power. The dragoness didn't hide anything. In reality, Chu Feng and the others had also heard that after the ice and snow melted, A marine race expert unexpectedly obtained the dragon bloodgrass, and his strength rose sharply. At that time, someone in Europe just happened to obtain the legendary Holy Grail and rapidly evolve. At that time, it caused quite an uproar. Yellow Cattle said, according to legend, the dragon bloodgrass was transformed from ordinary grasses that had been drenched in dragon blood. After gaining intelligence, it became an astonishing precious evolutionary medicine. It's extremely precious. However, Yellow Cattle explained that it was only a legend. People believed that this grass grew near the dragon lair and was nourished by the energy particles left behind by the true dragon. That was why it was so extraordinary. Moreover, Yellow Cattle took the example. Although the dragon bloodgrass was extraordinary, it couldn't be considered a top-notch item when compared to the materials produced in the dragon lair. Yellow Cattle said, in the dragon lair, there's usually a reverse-scale flower, which is priceless. There might even be a dragon embryo tree, which is even more terrifying. It contains the true essence of fortune. Once found, all the great holy lands in the starry skies will be envious. Let's go and snatch it, Ouyang Feng shouted. His eyes were bulging and he was almost drooling as he stared at the dragon lair amidst the ruins. Almost at the same time, the problem lady also shouted happily, "Go, go, go!" The others rolled their eyes. Did they really think they could reach the dragon lair? That was the dwelling place of the saint. Even if it had long since been moved away, and there were no living creatures, evolvers at their level had no way of approaching it. Sigh, I know where the eight-clawed king dug up the dragon bloodgrass. It's just outside the ruins. He's really lucky. Chu Feng sighed. He used his fiery eyes to observe the terrain and discovered that there were traces of digging in the area outside the ruins. There used to be dragon bloodgrass there. That was because he even saw a withered grass that had been missed by someone. It had been cut off by accident and no one had noticed it. The eight-clawed king didn't have the fiery eyes and could easily get lost. He couldn't see through the truth of these ruins, so he could only say that he was very lucky to be able to stumble upon something. Chu Feng also saw some dragon bloodgrass among the ruins, but he felt that it would be difficult to dig it up. I'll go and try. Chu Feng was truly unresigned. He was helpless after coming here, and could only try to move forward. This couldn't be blamed on his weak attainments in domains. It was because this place was too heaven-defying. It was the saint's territory and its level was too high. It wasn't suitable for them to approach. You guys wait for me here. Chu Feng didn't want them to take the risk. Handsome big brother Chu Feng, I'll advance and retreat with you, said the problem lady. The problem lady said with a tender and sweet appearance. She threw flirtatious glances at Chu Feng and sent him a flurry of flirtatious looks. She was indeed ridiculously beautiful. Although she wasn't that old, she was over 170 centimeters tall. She had matured prematurely, and her figure was extremely alluring. Chu Feng knocked on her forehead and said, "Don't throw flirtatious glances at me." After some contact and understanding, he already knew that this child wasn't a brainless celebrity chaser. She was excessively intelligent and was trying to worm her way into the land of fortunes. Don't knock, it hurts." The problem lady clutched her spotlessly white forehead and cried out. "Let's go together," the black yak said. They were also worried about Chu Feng. The dragoness also said, "Amen, I can't let you take the risk alone. I'm the one who invited you here. I won't be able to forgive myself if something unexpected happens." The toad raised his chin and said arrogantly, "This is my family's territory. I'll definitely go in. I'm a dragon, a classic case of a true dragon returning to its nest. I've heard of little tadpoles looking for their mothers, but I've never heard of toads randomly recognizing relatives," the black yak said unkindly. "Go to hell, you cow that doesn't know how to milk," Ouyang Feng shouted. The two almost started fighting again. In the end, they went forward together and approached the ruins. Chu Feng deciphered everything along the way without encountering any dangerous incident. They arrived at the place where the eight-clawed king had once been. Chu Feng took action and shot out some magnetic stones to change the terrain. Immediately, the true scenery appeared. Ah, there really are ruins. It's so grand and majestic. The others could also see the ruins of the divine city in front of them. This was the dwelling place of the dragon race. In ancient times, there had once been many powerful evolvers here. Chu Feng walked over and picked up the broken dragon bloodgrass. Then, he dug out its withered root. What a pity! Only a portion of its medicinal properties remains and it's been severely depleted. Yellow Cattle sighed. This was a wondrous grass that could help them evolve. Its spirituality was excellent. It's fine. It can still be used to refine medicine. Chu Feng said as he stared at the ruins. He had to get a piece of thunderstruck wood no matter what. There was one not far away. Chapter 390. The thunderstruck tree was jet black like black jade with a slightly sparkling luster. Additionally, there was a tender branch on the tree with a few leaves growing on it. Even after the passage of time, the leaves were still fresh, tender, and full of vitality. At the same time, lightning would rush out from time to time. This was the destructive power it had endured after being struck by lightning. Later on, the plant didn't die and continued to grow, producing lightning. The thunderstruck tree contained an innate vitality. Destruction and rebirth coexisted. This was its peculiar characteristic. This kind of tree was too rare. Normally, it would die immediately after being struck by lightning and would never grow again. It was difficult to find a few even if one searched through the famed mountains and great rivers. At the very least, Chu Feng couldn't find any after searching all around. However, there was a huge pile of them in the vicinity of the true dragon's lair. There were tens of thousands of them. It was simply unimaginable. The closest one was very close to the border, but Chu Feng didn't dare act blindly without thinking. This was the location of the ancient dragon god city. The terrain here was special and the broken domains were terrifying. True dragon's lair, here I come. Ouyang Feng puffed out his belly and cried out loudly. This fellow was actually extremely daring. He released his own aura and took a step forward. Behave yourself. Chu Feng went to grab it. Don't move. I'm the true dragon's son of heaven. This is my home field. I'll let you see what it means to have the mandate of heaven, cried the toad. That was because it really felt something special. There seemed to be some kind of energy resonating with it from the distant dragon cave and calling out to it. Now, it strode forward based on its senses. It wanted to merge with that energy in hopes of stepping into the true dragon cave. Chu Feng didn't hold it back. The toad rushed into the ruins with a swoosh. The runes beneath its feet flickered and the blood energy within its body seeped out. The originally restless ancient land immediately calmed down. There was no longer any danger. The people behind were astonished. Chu Feng was especially puzzled. Why were the domain runes ineffective against it? He frowned and quickly realized the reason. Some astonishing domains could carve all kinds of imprint. For instance, a certain creature's blood energy imprint or a spiritual imprint. This meant that when they buried the magnetic stones, they could make targeted arrangements for certain races. Apparently, the domain grandmaster of the past was extremely heaven-defying. Against the dragon race, this place was practically a level road with no threat. Ha ha! The toad Ouyang Feng couldn't stop laughing. He turned his head and cast a sidelong glance at Chu Feng, saying, I'm going to seize the fortune. When I become a carefree realm expert, I'll take you as my mount. Chu Feng's face immediately darkened. This fellow had always been unconvinced, and had actually wanted to rebel. Taking him as a mount was really asking for a beating. Little tadpole, don't be cocky. Hurry up and pick the dragon's bloodgrass. Also, throw out a few pieces of thunderstruck wood. The Tiger King shouted. His eyes emitted a thieving light, and his face was full of hope. In truth, this result was out of everyone's expectations. The black yak and the others looked as if they had seen a ghost. This toad that deserved a beating was actually walking on flat ground. But entering the dragon's lair? Boom! At this time, the toad suddenly cried out miserably because a huge explosion had occurred. At this moment, its entire body was scorched black as it scampered away. Ah, help! At this moment, its intuition told it that it was done for. The resonance from before had disappeared, and this place had become dangerous for it. Bang, bang, bang! The toad was in a miserable state. It had been blasted out almost all the way and was badly mutilated. One of its legs had almost fallen off as it howled miserably. This caused everyone's expressions to change as they felt a wave of horror. Chu Feng quickly threw out a number of magnetic crystals which had already been engraved with domain runes. They landed in the ruins as he guided the toad and helped it escape. Oh! The toad cried out loudly. Fortunately, it hadn't taken too many steps in. Otherwise, it would have died without a doubt. By the time it came out, it was already emitting waves of fragrant meat. Its tough body was full of cracks, and one of its legs was fractured and almost broken. As a divine beast, its intuition was the sharpest. Sometimes, its various judgments were based on this kind of instinctive divine instinct. However, things were still going well at the beginning, but then it suddenly changed. Are you still a family? You're not a good thing to trick your own people. The toad was furious and shouted toward the true dragon's lair. Stop shouting. You should have dragon blood in your body, but it's not pure. That's why you were attacked in the end, said Chu Feng. A shocking domain had once been laid down in this area. He judged that only pure-blooded true dragons could approach and enter safely. Other creatures couldn't. Apart from this, he could only rely on domain techniques to break it. Chu Feng walked over and helped the toad connect its broken bones. Ouyang Feng's eyes were immediately filled with tears as he said, "Thank you." But soon after, it cried out miserably, "Ao, are you trying to murder me? Let go, my leg is broken. I give up. Big brother, you're my blood brother. Let go quickly and I won't dare say I'll take you as a mount anymore." Chu Feng patted it and stood up. At the same time, he made the toad stand back and arrived at the edge of the ruins to study it. This was time-consuming and required continuous deduction. In the end, Chu Feng made his move and entered the ruins. He wanted to get a thunderstruck wood, and the others followed suit to assist him. They listened to his orders and constantly produced magnetic crystals. But they ended up in a miserable state. Before long, a black energy radiance soared, and they were blasted until they were covered in dirt and dirt. Their bodies were stained with blood as they escaped. Damn, this is lunar lightning. How sinister! Which Bulsh *T domain grandmaster laid down this domain? He only knows how to scam his descendants. The group of people were indignant. All of them were injured and spitting out bloody froth from their mouths. It wasn't that Chu Feng wasn't strong, but the disparity between him and a domain grandmaster was too great. He could only rejoice that this place had been destroyed back then. Otherwise, he would have died if he entered. Chu Feng was helpless. He recalled the stone inscriptions the dragoness had given him. There was once a domain grandmaster who had come here and wanted to lay down a formation around the dragon's lair. But that domain grandmaster failed. He left behind some stone inscriptions when he was on the verge of death. Chu Feng had long since memorized them in his heart. Now that he thought about it, he had some ideas after a long time of serious contemplation. He tried again, but the area was once again filled with ghostly wails and wolf howls. Ouch, it hurts so much. I'm not going to take the risk. Brother, I took a few wrong steps again. This old bull is almost roasted. This time, I drew out the essence flames of extreme yang and almost burned off one of my horns. Hee-haw, hee-haw, hee-haw. Goddamn it, old donkey, I'll beat you to death if you dare yell and take advantage of me again. It could be said that the place was in a state of chaos. Chu Feng kept on experimenting and pushing forward, but he was tormented by the domain runes time and time again. If you can't do it, just throw the toad in. In any case, it can walk a safe distance and we can use it to scout the way. Old Black, you dare? The toad stomped its feet. Boom. Following which, several more explosions occurred. The group spat out blood and suffered serious injuries. Even the dragoness was in a state of disarray, and her snow-white body was charred black. Handsome big brother Chu Feng, I'm not going in. My old waist is about to be broken. The problem lady supported her slender waist and was in a sorry state. Her whole body was covered in traces of being struck by lightning. Her little face was tense and her heart was filled with lingering fear. However, Chu Feng was quite engrossed and felt more and more. Later on, he told everyone to retreat and he studied alone. In the end, he successfully charged in and brought out a piece of thunderstruck wood. Moreover, he pulled out a few stalks of dragon's blood grass, but it was too much of a pity. These stalks of precious medicine were damaged beyond recognition after the great explosion just now, all of them damaged beyond recognition. There won't be much effect if we eat them directly. Let's use them to refine medicine, said Chu Feng as he placed the thunderstruck wood and the damaged draconic blood grass into the spatial bottle. Let's go. The level of this place is too high. The sage's dwelling isn't something we can explore at our current level. When I become a domain grandmaster one day, I'll definitely enter the dragon cave and dig out the reverse scale flower and dragon embryo tree. That kind of thing was effective even for golden Arhat level evolvers, let alone them. Once they consumed it, they would become top experts on Earth. The others felt that it was a pity. They had to guard this precious land, yet it was difficult to obtain the most astonishing fortune. For instance, there was a large patch of draconic bloodgrass in the distance. It was right in front of the dragon cave, yet they couldn't obtain it. Spiritual energy and telekinesis were all ineffective in this place. The power of domains was omnipresent. What a deceptive dragon nest! Ouyang Feng was the most unwilling. Let's go quickly. We caused too much of a commotion just now and activated a portion of the domains in these ruins. I feel that it's very dangerous. If we provoke it just a little more, we'll definitely provoke a great disaster. Chu Feng's expression was solemn. He stared at the tall bronze pillar in the ruins and discovered that it was sparkling and translucent. The rag on it, which was half a flag, was actually fluttering in the wind. How strange. The dragon race's war flag is moving, mumbled Yellow Cattle. Let's go. We can't stay here for long, said Chu Feng. He then muttered, this place is suitable for swindling people. If we encounter extraterrestrials in the future, we can lure them here. Chu Feng and the others had just left the ruins and walked outside when they were blocked in the blink of an eye. Oh, not bad. You guys are quite capable. I like it. A few figures appeared. It was a silver-robed middle-aged man with a cold smile on his face. He was extremely powerful and emitted an abnormally terrifying aura. It was suspected that he had severed his 9th shackle. Who are you? Asked Chu Feng. The Dragon King of the Southern Sea. You've crossed the line. The dragoness spoke. Her expression changed as she recognized the other party's identity. The Elder Dragon King of the Southern Sea? Chu Feng was astonished. No, I'm his sworn brother. My name is Long Zhe. The silver-robed middle-aged man had a faint smile on his face. He was very heroic and was obviously an extraordinary expert. He was emitting powerful self-confidence. Even the entities beside him weren't weak. All of them were suffused with astonishing energy. Long Zhe laughed and glanced at the dragoness. Niece, your father is entangling my brother, the Elder Dragon King of the Southern Sea. He's afraid he'll come to the Eastern Sea's eye. But I'm a free man. Long Zhe has severed his 9th shackle. He's the number 2 character of the Southern Sea Dragon Palace. The dragoness informed Chu Feng. This caused Chu Feng's heart to tremble. The life forms of the ocean were indeed terrifying. They were comparable to descenders and had actually evolved to such a level, surpassing the continent. But after thinking about how the Fusang Divine Tree and the Dragon Blood Grass had appeared one after another, he felt relieved. At present, the fortunes in the ocean were indeed more astonishing than those on the continent. If they wanted to compete with the Fusang Divine Tree, they would have to wait for the birth of the peaches of immortality from Kunlun. So you're Chu Feng. You killed 2 of my nephews in succession. Long Zhe had his hands behind his back and wore a faint smile. However, it was somewhat cold and cruel. Hei Ting had been killed by Chu Feng on Mount Sanqing, and the Southern Sea Black Dragon's 2nd prince had been burned to death by Chu Feng on Mount Zhijin. Both of them were the Elder Dragon King's flesh and blood. Now, the Elder Dragon King's sworn brother, the other Southern Sea Old Flood Serpent, Long Zhe, had appeared. Naturally, he wouldn't be kind and wanted to kill Chu Feng. What did you guys get from the dragon lair just now? Hand it all over, Long Zhe said with a smile. In your dreams, Chu Feng replied. That was because it was useless to compromise. His enmity with the Southern Sea lineage was too deep. Apparently, Long Zhe had arrived long ago and was waiting outside to seize their fortunes. I can spare your lives. But I have a condition. Apart from handing over what you got just now, you have to enter the dragon lair and help me pick some dragon blood grass, said Long Zhe. This was completely using them as tools, forcing them to throw their lives away to help him obtain precious evolution medicines. The dragoness spoke, Uncle Long Zhe, you've crossed the line. This is the Eastern Sea Dragon race's territory, and Chu Feng is an honored guest I've invited. It's not right of you to cause trouble at the eye of the Eastern Sea. Niece, I won't make things difficult for you today. Stand to the side, said Long Zhe. He then glanced at Chu Feng and said, What, are you not convinced? The situation is stronger than the person. I know you're very powerful and have severed 7 shackles, but so what? I'm not one of those extraterrestrials who can't display their true strength. Today I'll eat you for sure. Either you submit to me and help me pick the dragon blood grass, or you die immediately. Long Zhe's expression was cold and filled with killing intent. The people behind him also revealed killing intent as they stared at Chu Feng. You're going too far. Chu Feng looked at Long Zhe. Yes, I'm bullying you. What can you do about it? Long Zhe sneered. He was fairly tyrannical and appeared quite confident. Uncle Yiksha, ask them to leave. At this time, the dragoness suddenly spoke. Very well. A figure flickered in the distance and a person walked over. His entire body was suffused with a faint golden color. This was a patrolling Yiksha, but he was quite powerful. He had actually also severed 9 shackles. This was a top expert of the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace, second only to the Elder Dragon King. The golden Yiksha's skin was like metal. He walked over slowly and stared at Long Zhe. Long Zhe, you should leave. Weren't you in the Southern Sea? You've actually returned quietly. Long Zhe sneered and then said, Since I've come, I don't want to leave. I must capture and kill this Chu Feng. Afterward, he relaxed his expression and was no longer solemn. He glanced at the old Yiksha and said, Brother Yiksha, this is a rare opportunity. This brat's attainments in the domain are extraordinary. Drive him into the dragon lair and let him risk his life. Perhaps he'll really be able to pick some dragon blood grass. The dragoness' expression sank. Do you think the people of the Eastern Sea are the same as your Southern Sea Dragon race? Chu Feng is my guest. How can Uncle Yiksha do that? Long Zhe laughed indifferently. He didn't look at the dragoness but instead at the old Yiksha. How about it, Dao brother? It was at this time that a figure appeared in the distance. He strode over and said, the southern sea dragon race is quite awe-inspiring. This was a middle-aged man. The most important thing was that he was a human and not a marine race entity. He had already severed 8 shackles. At this time, Chu Feng, the Black Yak, and the others were all astonished. This underwater world was no small matter. 3 great experts had appeared in succession, far surpassing those on land. A human expert. How unexpected. But you're still one level lower. If you want to meddle in our business, you'll have to pay for it yourself, Long Zhe said indifferently. At the same time, he was also somewhat astonished. Where had this human with 8 severed shackles come from? That means you insist on letting Chu Feng enter the dragon lair and pick the dragon's blood grass for you? The human male asked. He looked to be in his 30s or 40s and was clad in a purple robe of ancient attire. He was of medium build and, although his appearance was ordinary, his aura was quite powerful. So what if I am? Long Zhe revealed a tyrannical expression. He was prepared to make this fierce human stay. You have to look at the master before beating the dog. You dare touch someone that my Penglai immortal island wants to protect? The man of medium build revealed a cold smile and said, even if I really let him enter the dragon lair to pick the dragon's blood grass, it won't be your southern sea dragon race's turn to obtain it. Penglai immortal island. When they heard these words, both the old Yiksha and Long Zhe's expressions changed. Chu Feng, Yellow Cattle, and the Manchurian Tiger couldn't calm their hearts. At first, Chu Feng had a good impression of him. As a fellow human, this person was standing up for him. But after hearing the latter part, his expression became unsightly. That was because this person's words were too unpleasant to hear. What did he mean by "you have to look at the master before beating the dog" mean? Such a statement was too inappropriate. At this time, the middle-aged man glanced at Chu Feng and said, "Can you enter the dragon lair and pick some dragon's blood grass? I have use for them." "I can't," Chu Feng replied. The middle-aged man's expression immediately sank, and he no longer spoke. He then waved his hand at Long Zhe, gesturing for him to leave with a rather impatient expression. Although he was only 8 severed shackles, Long Zhe was quite apprehensive because he had announced his origin and was from the Penglai immortal island. He actually wanted to leave after some hesitation. Chu Feng was unhappy. What did these people think he was? Long Zhe was one thing, but things were destined to be bad. That was because the southern sea dragon race had an old grudge with Chu Feng. And this human had actually said such things just now. Something about looking at the master before beating the dog? And now, after driving Long Zhe away, he wanted to keep Chu Feng alone. Could it be that he also wanted to force him into the dragon lair? Chapter 391. Why haven't you left yet? The purple-robed man glanced at Long Zhe's group with a displeased expression. Long Zhe had wanted to leave at first, but his expression became unsightly after hearing these words. This was not giving him a way out of this embarrassing situation. The people of Penglai were truly arrogant. "Excuse me, are you one of the protectors of Penglai?" Long Zhe asked. That was because he knew that the giants of the marine race had been alarmed after the island's emergence. There was actually a group of ancients living on that island. In the past, they had never seen that island in the sea. However, the arrival of the Rubik's Cube had triggered all sorts of changes after falling into the ocean. The mythical Penglai Island appeared for the first time at that time. "What are you asking so many questions for?" The purple-robed man shot him a glance. Long Zhe said, "My elder brother is the Southern Sea Elder Dragon King. He has lived for hundreds of years and his cultivation is profound. With the dragonification fruit, he is destined to transform into a flood dragon and soar into the heavens. He holds the Penglai Island in high esteem and told me several times that the sea dragons and immortal islands will form an alliance in the future. He brought up the Southern Sea Elder Dragon King because he knew that the people of Penglai understood his meaning. The Southern Sea Elder Dragon King's accumulation was deep enough. With the recovery of the world and the continuous appearance of the Fusang, Sea God, and Dragonification divine trees, the Elder Dragon King was destined to rise with unstoppable momentum. Although Penglai Island was powerful, the overlords of the flood dragons would definitely become heaven-defying existences in the future. They would be able to overlook the world, and there were already signs of this happening. This was what Long Zhe wanted to express. The purple-robed man said, "Oh, if you want to rise, you should first obtain the Dragonification fruit and use it to condense the true flood dragon bloodline. Then, you can rely on this bloodline to charge into the distant dragon lair. Only then will you be able to see who can achieve a true dragon physique." His attitude softened a bit because he knew that one or two of the current Dragon Kings would definitely rise. It was indeed not a good idea to offend them. Long Zhe revealed a smile. Face was mutual, and this was much better than being forced to leave. Thus, he also began to compliment the Penglai Island. Soon after, he mentioned that he wanted to capture Chu Feng and that the Southern Sea Dragon race was willing to gift them a Dragonification fruit. "My big brother has already discovered the Dragonification tree and is currently preparing to approach it." Long Zhe revealed a faint smile. The dragoness furrowed her brows. She knew that Long Zhe was not compromising, but was doing so out of long-term considerations. He wanted to represent the Southern Sea Dragon race in befriending Penglai. Things were often like this. Only when there was reciprocity and common aspirations could they become a community of shared interests. Chu Feng was also astonished. This Long Zhe originally had an ugly expression on his face and was about to lose face, but in the end, he actually wanted to form a relationship with the Penglai Immortal Island. His skin was really thick. If the ancient people of Penglai wanted to explore the ocean and the seabed to search for relics and divine trees, they were certainly not as good as the sea race. However, they were confident that they would not meet their match on the island. Thus, the Penglai lineage had also considered and felt that they should approach and cooperate with the sea race. The purple-robed man smiled and chatted with Long Zhe quite harmoniously. "Why do you insist on targeting this Chu Feng?" the purple-robed man asked. Long Zhe said, "My big brother has lived for a long time and had quite a number of children, but most of them have passed away. After the upheavals, he had 3 children who could be considered worthy, but 2 of them have died in Chu Feng's hands in the recent months. This is simply gouging out his heart." According to Long Zhe, this had already become the Southern Sea Elder Dragon King's heart demon. If not for the fact that he had to search for the Dragonification fruit and Sea God fruit, he would have long since gone ashore to kill Chu Feng. "So that's how it is." The purple-robed man muttered to himself for a moment and said, "But this Chu Feng is a human and knows domains. He can't be considered an ordinary cat or dog. He's indeed not bad." Behind him, Chu Feng's expression sank. From the beginning until now, this person from the Penglai Immortal Island had always made him unhappy. How could he speak like this? Apparently, the purple-robed man was quite conceited and didn't take the humans outside of the island seriously. He had a sense of superiority. Long Zhe smiled. "I know. You have to look at the master before beating the dog. But I'm not going to kill him personally. Doesn't Penglai need the dragon blood grass? Just let him enter the dragon's lair to pick it." Green veins appeared on Chu Feng's forehead as the flames of fury surged in his heart. He didn't take action during this process not because he had a good temper but because he was making arrangements. He quietly gathered the black yak, the toad, and the problem lady to his side. On the Penglai Immortal Island, every blade of grass, every tree, every man, and every dog is valuable. The purple-robed man revealed an odd expression. He then glanced at Chu Feng and said, "If I let you enter the dragon's lair, how confident are you in picking the dragon blood grass?" Chu Feng paid him no attention. He was already extremely unhappy in his heart, and now he had made his preparations. He had calculated the dangerous areas near the dragon's lair as well as the relatively safe terrain. He secretly told the dragoness that she could send a message to that old Yiksha and tell him to leave this place. He was prepared to go on a killing spree. The dragoness was shaken and wanted to dissuade him. That was because she knew how terrifying the Punglai Immortal Island was. There was a group of ancient people there who considered themselves to be the orthodox lineage of Earth. In their eyes, they were the masters of Earth and were of the orthodox lineage. If Chu Feng were to directly kill the purple-robed man here, it might cause a big problem. Don't worry, he'll die in vain. The eruption of the dragon's lair has nothing to do with me. He's just unlucky. Chu Feng secretly transmitted his voice. He didn't seem to mind at all. He was being looked down upon again and again. Even things like beating dogs and cats were used. Those people from the Punglai Immortal Island really thought themselves to be high and mighty. Moreover, they were now exchanging benefits with Long Zhe and wanted Chu Feng to risk his life to go to the dragon's lair to pick the dragon blood grass. According to his character, how could he compromise and lower his head in humiliation? He would look for trouble and get rid of these two even if he had nothing better to do. Chu Feng, I'm talking to you. Can't you hear me? The purple-robed man raised his voice and his expression sank. He was actually being ignored. This made him unhappy. Who do you think you are to pretend in front of me? Chu Feng said coldly. He then kicked the toad and said, Start cursing. Curse what? The toad didn't come to its senses for a moment. Use your flaming nature and curse them fiercely. Let me relax. Chu Feng shot it a glance and said, Who's a flaming person? Damn your grandpa, I've always been very civilized. Who said I'm a flaming person? I dare you to say that again? The toad was so angry that it started cursing. You're still saying you're not a flaming person? Your spittle is all over my face. The black yak was furious and wiped his face frantically. That was because Chu Feng was using him as a shield, because he was afraid of being splashed by the spittle. Over there. Chu Feng made the toad turn around and spit at the right person. Moreover, he beat it up a few times without holding back. God damn it! The toad was extremely unhappy after being beaten up for no reason. Then it started to curse. In order to vent, it didn't matter who it cursed. In any case, it didn't dare curse Chu Feng now, so it could only curse Long Zhe and the purple-robed man. For a moment, its spittle flew everywhere like a torrential downpour. God damn it! Long Zhe and the purple-robed man weren't paying attention and were sprayed all over their heads and faces. They were so angry that smoke was coming out of their 7 orifices. The purple-robed man was originally furious because he was shocked by Chu Feng's words. Now that they were suddenly attacked, he was so angry that he was about to ascend to the heavens. He and Long Zhe had indeed heard Chu Feng telling the toad to spit at them. They originally thought it was cursing and cursing them. Who would have thought there would be a torrent of spittle after hearing the string of obscenities? God damn it! The toad started cursing. It used all kinds of vulgarities, none of them repeating the same thing. Moreover, 1/2 kilogram of spittle would spray out as soon as it opened its mouth. At this time, the dragoness and the black yak were both dumbfounded. Even the problem lady's mouth was wide open, as if she had seen a ghost. This brother is really a flaming person. Even the Manchurian tiger was dumbfounded and couldn't help but exclaim. Yes, he's quite talented, Chu Feng said calmly. The first time they met, Toad would spit out saliva while fighting with him. He had a bitter experience of this. You're courting death. Long Zhe was furious and the purple-robed man was humiliated. Both of them erupted with killing intent. They simply couldn't endure it. In truth, Chu Feng and the others were retreating during this process. They had begun to choose their positions, and were preparing to trick the enemy. Old donkey, it's your turn. Bark at them and make me feel better, said Chu Feng. The donkey was fairly cooperative. He raised his long ears and bared his front teeth as he shouted at Long Zhe and the purple-robed man, "Hee-haw, hee-haw, hee-haw, I'll slap you to death." Long Zhe and the purple-robed man were furious. They were quite imposing at first and paid great attention to their demeanor, but now they were truly infuriated. That was a donkey baring its front teeth as it brayed at them. It was actually so hateful. "You're just a lackey from the Penglai Immortal Island, right? Or perhaps a servant?" Chu Feng asked the purple-robed man at the last juncture. Afterward, he disappeared with the group of people. To be more precise, he entered the pristine jade bottle and put away the flying saucer. At the same time, he detonated the entire area. Boom! The world was turned upside down as ghosts and gods howled. Some patterns lit up within the ruins and shook the entire area. The land within 100 kilometers trembled violently as energy interweaved and surged violently. To be more precise, there was an explosion within the ruins. As a result, a portion of the terrifying energy overflowed and wreaked havoc in the area. Without a doubt, the dragon lair was extremely terrifying. Not to mention them, even existences several levels higher would die here. Fortunately, they were all outside the ruins. Even so, the energy overflowing from within possessed incomparable destructive power. It ravaged the land like a raging river. Long Zhe and the purple-robed man were terrified. They immediately retreated and rushed into the distance in a bid to escape. They reacted extremely quickly and fled into the distance in the blink of an eye. They wanted to escape from the eye of the eastern sea, but they were still struck by the energy waves at the very edge. Long Zhe screamed miserably as his body was pierced through. He coughed up large mouthfuls of blood, and his subordinates didn't even get a chance to groan before exploding into several balls of bloody mist. The purple-robed man was also in a miserable state. In terms of strength, he was inferior to Long Zhe, so his injuries were naturally more severe. His body was broken into two on the spot. The pristine jade bottle was flying at top speed amidst the chaotic energy flows. Chu Feng was controlling it with his spiritual art. He had long since chosen the safest terrain and was rushing out. Even if they were occasionally swept by the energy, they would be blocked by this mysterious bottle. They were safe and sound. When passing by the border, Chu Feng saw that the purple-robed man hadn't died completely. He drove the spatial bottle and directly smashed into him. With a bang, the man's upper body was torn into pieces, and even his head was blooming with flowers. "Why are the flowers so red?" Chu Feng chanted. At this time, Long Zhe was howling miserably as his body was once again struck by the energy. Although he had escaped the sea eye and rushed into the boundless ocean, he was already on the verge of death. Before long, a flying saucer rushed out of the water. Chu Feng was laughing mischievously as he carried Long Zhe, who was like a dead dog in the cabin. "You!" Long Zhe was shocked, furious, and terrified. This was actually the result. The energy fluctuations in the sea were quite intense. The old Yiksha was shocked out of his wits. He was injured, but the dragoness had warned him in advance. He didn't die, but his whole body was drenched in blood. "Where's the person from our Penglai Immortal Island?" someone cried out in alarm from a ship on the sea. The domains of the dragon lair suddenly erupted. He probably didn't escape. The dragoness appeared and informed him of the situation. Chu Feng didn't care about these things. He was tidying up Long Zhe. This flood serpent had fallen into his hands but still dared to be hostile. His eyes were cold even though he was on the verge of death. Before long, people discovered that Chu Feng had updated the gourmet rankings. Roasted tiger kidney and rock meat aren't ranked first and second anymore. They've been replaced by Southern Sea dragon soup. Oh my God, did Chu Feng run to the Southern Sea to eat dragons? Oh God, it really is a flood dragon. Such a thick body, rock meat, stew, there are all kinds of ways to eat it. I'm drooling just looking at it. People immediately discovered Chu Feng's updated rankings on the media platform and saw the photos of the ingredients and food he had posted. They were quite shocked. Chu Feng didn't hide anything. There was no way to resolve his enmity with the Southern Sea Dragon race, so he directly posted it. This, the suspected number 2 character of the Southern Sea Dragon race, has actually been eaten by Chu Feng and updated on the gourmet rankings. Is he trying to defy the heavens? At this time, Chu Feng was gorging himself with the toad and yellow cattle. Eating the enemy was the best way to deal with the enemy. Roar! Chapter 392. The number 2 character of the Southern Sea Dragon race has actually been eaten. This is too crazy. Is Chu Feng's strength and boldness going to break through the horizon? A professional stood out and confirmed Long Zhe's identity. This caused a huge commotion. Last time, the world was sealed in ice. After the severe frost, the whole world evolved rapidly. It was also at that time that the humans and marine races reached an agreement and stopped fighting on a large scale. At that time, the negotiators had seen Long Zhe's 1,000-meter-long flood serpent body rise up from the sea. It was truly shocking, stirring up great waves and intimidating the experts of the continent. Now, he had actually died and become food on a plate. On the continent, both humans and beast races were greatly shocked. No one could say for sure what Long Zhe's true strength was, but as the number 2 character of the Southern Sea Dragon race, his identity was enough to scare people to death. In the Origin Magnetic Immortal Cave at the North Pole, some extraterrestrials knew better than the people on the continent that the old dragons in the sea were exceptionally powerful. Princess Lin was astonished, and the group of Descender descendants were even more dumbfounded by Chu Feng's strength. Go and investigate the details. Find out how Long Zhe died. In Shuntian, the Hollow Jade Temple Master was in a bad mood recently. Lu Tong had actually resigned and left the temple. He was furious because he knew why Lu Tong had left. He wanted to order the old man to be captured and let him understand that it wasn't so easy to leave the Hollow Jade Temple. But now it was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over him. He calmed down and maintained his sobriety. It's that Chu Feng again, he muttered to himself. Recently, this name was like a nightmare that kept popping up. It made him feel uneasy and incomparably apprehensive. On Mount Lao, the 1,000-year-old Taoist temple was shrouded in white mist, spiraling cranes, and a spiritual waterfall. Linoi stood atop the mountain, her white robes fluttering in the wind. She had also seen the news posted by Chu Feng. At this time, she was facing the vast ocean and gazing in the direction of the eastern sea with a profound expression. On Mount Kunlun, a group of great demons were leaving messages for Chu Feng. Brother, having fun alone is not as good as having fun together. Hurry up and return to the Kunlun realm. We are also waiting to eat the number 1 Southern Sea Dragon meat on the gourmet rankings. On Mount Putoa, Jiang Luotian mumbled, "He's really shocking every time. He just killed the aliens and now he's gone to slay dragons in the sea. What a disaster. Luotian, if you want to see him, we can send you there." An old man suddenly appeared with a smile on his face like a ghost, scaring Jiang Luotian. "Old man, are you trying to scare me to death? You don't even make a sound when you walk." At this time, the upper echelons of the major corporations were all convinced. They were thoroughly scared out of their wits because they felt that Chu Feng couldn't be provoked. This person was a jinx who would lead to death wherever he went. Anyone who came into contact with him would suffer misfortune. On a small island in the East Sea, Chu Feng and the others were eating heartily. "Dragon meat is so delicious." The problem lady was complaining of a stomachache as she ate. Her small waist was round and plump, and her large eyes were darting about amorously. This was a deserted island near the eye of the East Sea. Even the dragoness found it odd because she had never seen it before. Not long ago, they had rushed out of the sea and discovered it. There were no plants on the island, only rocks, some of which were hundreds of meters tall. This island seems to have come out of the sea. Look, there's seawater in some of the potholes. Yellow Cattle pointed to a certain area. After finishing the dragon meat, the group wandered around the island and revealed odd expressions. This place was somewhat odd because white mist had suddenly risen from the depths of the island. Then, they staggered and revealed astonished expressions. That was because the island was shaking violently as if there was an earthquake. Boom! Following which, a mountain rose from the center of the rocky island. It was quite short at first, but it grew rapidly and its aura gradually became majestic. Let's go. The dragoness immediately steered the flying saucer and took the group into the air. This place was too odd. A rocky island had appeared out of nowhere in the eye of the East Sea, and now, a tall mountain was rising from it. The group looked down from the sky and observed the island. It was submerged in mist, and the island had completely changed. Several majestic mountains appeared one after another and grew taller and taller. In the end, they surpassed the flying saucer. Only after a long time had passed did the island become quiet and shrouded in mist. There were 7 large mountains at the center, standing side by side. They were all black and several thousand zhang tall. They were shrouded in white mist and couldn't see their depths. It's really strange. Could it be that we've touched the dragon nest and caused this island to appear? They were very curious and wanted to find out the truth. In the end, the flying saucer approached the island again and slowly descended. They were apprehensive. Was this still the deserted island they had stayed on before? The island was still deathly still, but many trees had appeared. However, there were no leaves, buds, or buds. Instead, there were only withered branches and even some rotting branches. At the same time, the island had become many times larger. What was going on? The island was filled with shadows. It was either rocks or dead trees. There was a rotting smell, and it was somewhat strange after being shrouded in white mist. Chu Feng and the others were both skilled and daring. All of them landed on the island. This place is filled with dense yin qi and is covered in white mist. Why do I feel cold all over? The old donkey mumbled. He had always been very timid. Handsome big brother Chu Feng, I'll go with you. The problem lady was also very uneasy. Is this our dragon race's territory? It's very close to the sea. The toad revealed a doubtful expression. There were many trees on the island, but they were all rotting and none of them had leaves. After traveling for a long distance, they finally approached the 7 majestic mountains. They circled around them and finally saw a blue stone staircase leading into the mountains. This is the mountain gate area. They suspected that this was an ancient orthodoxy that had been submerged by the sea and had now reappeared in the world. Perhaps the island had been hidden in a folded space in the past and had only come into being now. They walked along the stone steps into the mountains. Very soon, the problem lady screamed and hung on to Chu Feng's body like a koala. She pointed ahead and said, "Ghosts! What are evolved beings afraid of ghosts?" Chu Feng pulled her down and placed her on the ground. But at this time, the others also drew in breaths of cold air. There was a skeleton in the distance with only a layer of old skin wrapped around its body. Its mouth kept opening and closing as if it was speaking. Chu Feng felt his hair stand on end. What was going on? How many years had this skeleton lived for? Demons and monsters, how dare you scare this grandpa? I'll beat you to death. The toad rushed over and was about to attack. That was because it had sensed that the skeleton didn't have much energy on its body. It jumped back in fright because a toad had crawled out from behind the rock. Its flesh had almost rotted away, and only a skeleton and some dried skin were left on its body. That scared this grandpa to death. How can there be such a big skeleton toad? It cried out strangely. Everyone felt that something was wrong. They looked ahead and found some creatures in the form of skeletons that could move. Are these things still alive? This place shielded one's divine instincts and made their senses less acute. Along the way, they were careful and prudent. When they arrived at the mountain gate, they discovered that the foot of the 7 great mountains made them feel fear. There were many species that looked extremely powerful in the past, but now they were all strange and terrifying. Their flesh had pretty much all fallen off, revealing white skeletons, but they were all still alive and could move. What the hell? Have we stepped onto the Yellow Springs Road? The black yak was bewildered. Yellow Cattle's little face was taut as he gazed attentively at the scene before him. There's a stone tablet, look. There was a stone tablet within the mountain gate. There were densely packed characters carved upon it, describing some old event. However, Chu Feng, the dragoness, and the others didn't recognize them. The characters were too odd. Mount Eternal. Yellow Cattle suddenly spoke. What? It's actually this place. The problem lady cried out in surprise. Apparently, Yellow Cattle and the problem lady were shocked. They had recognized what kind of place this was. What's going on? Chu Feng asked in astonishment. Yellow Cattle opened his eyes wide and became incomparably excited. He stared at the stone tablet and the 7 great mountains in front of him, finding it difficult to calm down. After a long while, Yellow Cattle calmed down. He looked at Chu Feng and said, I've found the opportunity to become a sage ancestor. I might have to part ways with you here. Chu Feng was astonished. This is one of the 72 holy lands of the demon race, Mount Eternal. Yellow Cattle informed. The problem lady's face was full of envy and jealousy. She sighed repeatedly and said, This is one of the 72 most powerful holy lands of the demon race in the entire cosmic sea. Since that's the case, everyone stay behind. The toad shouted. He was afraid that Yellow Cattle would take everything for himself and wouldn't let him in. It's only suitable for the demon race, not humans. Yellow Cattle shook his head. The problem lady sighed. I really want to become a demoness. You're already one, okay? Chu Feng replied. He understood that this was the demon race's territory. It was a legendary place even in the cosmos. Countless great demons were searching for it, but they couldn't find a trace of it. Aren't there many holy lands in the various galaxies? Chu Feng asked. That's different. On some planets, the most powerful orthodoxies can call themselves Holy Land. The meaning is different, Yellow Cattle told Chu Feng. Since ancient times, the demon race had spread the legend of the 72 most powerful Holy Lands. Mount Eternal was one of them. They had lost contact with it for countless years, but who would have thought it would be on Earth? This kind of ancient Holy Land wasn't a major power, but a place of inheritance and tempering. If you're defeated here, you'll turn into a skeleton, but it's difficult to perish. You'll be imprisoned in the mountain for eternity. If you succeed after tempering yourself here, you can leave and build a supreme foundation to become a sage ancestor. Yellow Cattle warned the black yak, the Manchurian tiger, and the others to make their own decisions. In any case, Yellow Cattle wanted to enter the mountain. Chu Feng, let's part ways here. I don't know how many years it'll be before we meet again, Yellow Cattle said. Many years? This news was too sudden for Chu Feng. I'll go too. The toad made his decision. I'll go too. The black yak was also very decisive. He then looked at Chu Feng and said, Brother, we'll part ways here. Take care. Following which, the Manchurian tiger and the golden condor expressed their intentions to enter Mount Eternal. Even the spineless old donkey didn't hesitate at the crucial moment. He became unyielding and expressed that he would enter the mountain even if he died. Chapter 393. The little demon, after getting along for such a long time, going through thick and thin together and experiencing many life and death trials, Chu Feng felt a sense of loss and reluctance to part just like that. But he couldn't stop them. To Yellow Cattle, the Black Yak, and the others, Mount Eternal was a wondrous place that could change their lives. Mount Eternal had existed since time immemorial and signified transcendence. Looking at the starry skies of the cosmos, this was all a myth and legend. Countless great demons risked their lives to find it. It wasn't a sect, but a holy land for trials and tempering. According to the problem lady, there weren't many such places to be found. They had long since been isolated from the world or monopolized by the most powerful star realms. It was said that there were 72 holy lands for tempering, but how could one find so many in this world? To the current mutant race evolvers, this was the highest palace. Whether it's awesome or not can be seen from the few words circulating in the world, the problem lady narrated. Her exquisite little face was full of jealousy, envy, and hatred. According to some ancient documents and fragmentary descriptions in the handwritten notes of experts, Mount Eternal could train demonic sages. That was enough for him. How heaven-defying was this? What kind of creature was a demonic sage? It could overlook the stars, gaze at the sea of stars, and sweep through its opponents. It was absolutely terrifying to the extreme, but it could be trained here. The main point was the word training. It was too shocking after careful consideration. Before parting, Yellow Cattle said many things to Chu Feng. The Black Yak, the Manchurian Tiger, and the old donkey were also reluctant to part with him. They wanted to bid farewell to this world. Mount Eternal looked like 7 black mountains. Without a doubt, it was far more vast than imagined. There were things like a mustard seed containing a mountain, folded secret realms, and so on. There was no telling what kind of zone it would be if they really went in. Otherwise, how could the 7 bare black mountains build the foundation for the demon race to become saints and ancestors? How could they train demonic sages? Let me tell you about the path ahead. Yellow Cattle also felt a bit disappointed and frustrated, as it did not know if it would be able to walk out of this place. The skeletons that filled the mountain were the best proof and portrayal. There was a great terror here, and a group of living dead were lost here, unable to walk out. I'll wait for you to become a saint. When the time comes, we'll roam the sea of stars together and experience the glory of the various races in the universe. We'll fight against the so-called heaven illuminators, Chu Feng said. Earth had been crippled, and the once highly developed planet had declined to its current state, becoming a wasteland. Chu Feng had always wanted to explore its secrets and kill his way out of this world. Don't worry, brother. We will come out alive. Didn't we say that we would capture the saintess to warm the bed together? That was our promise. But now you can only go and have fun by yourself. The Manchurian Tiger grinned and said, diluting the sadness of parting. Then, Yellow Cattle became serious and told Chu Feng about some of the things that happened after the path of evolution, asking him to pay attention. Shackles focus on the accumulation of energy, from a prisoner to freedom. Yellow Cattle briefly summarized their current situation. This didn't include the toad because it was born without the so-called energy shackles and handcuff. However, many races had to struggle in the early stages. It was as if they were sitting in a cage and had to struggle free first. During the process of unlocking one shackle after another, various forms of energy would be released within the body. At the same time, some special abilities would be unlocked. The carefree realm, or the lesser demons, will first erase the various mottled and chaotic abilities obtained in the shackled realm and purify the body. Next, they will reconstruct themselves and learn one or more abilities in a systematic and precise manner. In other words, they will learn secret arts. According to Yellow Cattle, the abilities obtained at this stage were all chaotic and too mottled. There was simply no way for them to go deeper systematically. Therefore, after reaching the carefree realm, or the lesser demons, they would need to purify their bodies and erase those so-called special abilities, converting them into energy. Of course, there were also exceptions. Some special abilities obtained in the shackled realm were definitely worth keeping. But generally speaking, even if these abilities were quite impressive, keeping one or two would be enough. For instance, Chu Feng's fiery eyes. How many people from ancient to modern times could unlock this special ability even after searching through all the galaxies? This was a forbidden art. There was no secret art in this world that could explain the fiery eyes. This thing couldn't be learned. The foundation of the shackled realm is to accumulate energy and release one's freedom. The carefree realm, on the other hand, is to first purify oneself into a piece of white paper, retaining only energy, and then draw on it. Whether it's an outline of a weed by the roadside, or a painting that can swallow mountains and rivers, will depend on the individual's talent. Chu Feng was fascinated after hearing this, but he also felt that it was a pity. Erase all the special abilities and reconstruct them? There's nothing to be pitiful about. For instance, the lightning and flames you've grasped. Some evolutionary sects have hidden secret arts and researched them in greater depth. Yellow Cattle gave an example. Even though there weren't many people who could nurture metallic sword qi in their lungs, some orthodoxies still had such rare secret arts. Chu Feng nodded in complete understanding. In short, there were too many abilities to unlock at the shackled realm. They were too messy and of little value. After reaching the minor demon realm, they would be reconstructed and cleanly studied. At the carefree realm, someone would draw a great sun within their body that would illuminate the world. Finally, with the accumulation of time, they would become unrivaled under the heavens. There are also people who nurture a grain of sand, looking insignificant and petty. But there are also people who can evolve into a bodhisattva and use sand to open up the world. Yellow Cattle gave a simple example. As for the heaven-illuminating experts who were revered and worshipped by all the galaxies, it was difficult for outsiders to know how they started out at the minor demon realm. Yellow Cattle told Chu Feng that the carefree realm depended on one's talent, but certain things contained within the flesh were also very important. They were like heavenly gates that would block some originally talented entities. Yellow Cattle said a lot in one breath, telling Chu Feng everything he knew and understood. During this period, Chu Feng also asked about the various forms of energy such as spider lilies, crossing the river on a reed, golden lotus, and so on. How to construct these energy bodies. The carefree realm is explained in various secret arts. You don't need to pay attention to it for now. This kind of response also made Chu Feng frown. When the time came, he would have to learn the corresponding secret art. Yellow Cattle was about to enter Mount Eternal. An ancient land that could train demonic sages certainly wouldn't lack these things. But where would Chu Feng learn them? Could it be that he had to go against the outer realm's path and barge into their world to learn? Yellow Cattle reminded him, the breathing technique is the foundation. It will have different manifestations at different realms. We've just uncovered a corner of the mysterious veil, and there are even forbidden techniques hidden within the breathing technique. At the same time, he mentioned the demon ox fist and the demon flood dragon fist. These were secret arts. At the minor demon realm, these fist arts would transform and develop wondrous aspects. The parting was depressing, but in the end, Yellow Cattle, the black yak, the Manchurian tiger, and the old donkey walked toward the mountain gate in large strides and approached Mount Eternal. Would some people be able to come out alive? After all, this was a place to train demonic sages. Don't be sad. We'll definitely meet again. If worst comes to worst, I won't go up the mountain. I'll just squat at the foot of the mountain and wait for Little Yellow to comprehend and pass it on to me, the black yak said shamelessly. You're absolutely right. The old donkey rolled around and raised his 4 hooves in agreement. Agreed. The Manchurian tiger also didn't have any integrity to speak of. Chu Feng, go back. I'll raise you to be white and plump. You'll be my mount in the future. The toad's mouth was very annoying. It started to challenge after entering the mountain gate. Beat it up! Chu Feng shouted. All right. The black yak, the Manchurian tiger, and the others rushed up together. Then, yellow cattle also joined in. In the end, banging sounds rang out incessantly. Stop! You're not allowed to hit my peerlessly handsome face. The toad Ouyang Feng shouted. The sadness of parting had been diluted. The few of them fought and cursed as they entered Mount Eternal together. Chu Feng shouted from behind, telling them not to train immediately. They should wait for him to refine medicine and send it to them after a period of time. They should enter after increasing their strength. Everything can be found in Mount Eternal, Yellow Cattle said. Before leaving, Chu Feng took a stone from the foot of Mount Eternal with him. That was because, according to Yellow Cattle and the Problem Lady, they wouldn't be able to find this place if they didn't have any stones from Mount Eternal in their hands. Why don't you go? Chu Feng asked the dragoness. I'm more like a marine person, a type of human. The dragoness was helpless. She had the characteristics of the dragon race, such as a pair of small horns in her blue hair. However, she could never transform into a flood dragon and take on a human form because she had more of a marine person's bloodline. Chu Feng came to a sudden realization and said, No wonder you weren't a flood dragon when I used my fiery eyes to look at you. Then, he immediately shut his mouth. He had let it slip. Black lines appeared on the dragoness' forehead as she stared at him without saying a word. Handsome big brother Chu Feng is a pervert. Have you also seen through me? The Problem Lady blinked her big eyes and licked her red lips. Then, she assumed a shy and pure posture as she inquired. How can that be? You haven't even matured yet. I'm not interested. Nonsense, I've long since grown up. I'll fight it out with you. Tell me, have you seen Big Sister Dragoness everywhere? The little demoness revealed his shortcomings and wouldn't let go. The dragoness' expression turned even worse. What else could Chu Feng say? He wouldn't admit it even if he was beaten to death. Then, he changed the subject and continued running. Chu Feng had been a guest in the Eastern Sea and learned about the marine race from the dragoness. He had also asked about the Penglai Immortal Island and learned many secrets. The marine race's higher level of evolution originated from the arrival of the Rubik's Cube. It stimulated the ocean, causing mutant fruits and divine trees to appear continuously. This was the common understanding of the marine race. Ever since the Rubik's Cube's arrival, the ocean had become different. It was as if a certain balance had been broken. Self-preservation on a declining planet? Be it the marine race or the current Chu Feng, all of them had made the same guess. If an unforeseen event happened on the continent and a powerful power intervened, there would likely be drastic changes. Everyone was guessing that the continent would experience an unforeseen event sooner or later. The balance would be broken and intense changes wouldn't be far away. Penglai is one of the 3 immortal islands in the legends. It only appeared in the world after the Rubik's Cube fell into the ocean, the dragoness explained. There were ancients and orthodoxies on Penglai. Their strength was unfathomable, and they considered themselves to be orthodox. In the eyes of those people, they are the true masters of this planet. This concept is a bit terrifying. It's said that some of the young masters of the branches on that island have come out. The marine race had long suspected the ancients of the Penglai Immortal Island and believed that they were descenders. But later on, they discovered that they might really be members of the lost race. In the end, Chu Feng left because the Problem Lady's grandfather had chased Chu Feng all the way to the Eastern Sea. He was afraid that Chu Feng would harm his granddaughter. Old Dao brother, we'll be relatives from now on. Chu Feng ran away. Brat, don't let me catch you. At the same time, Chu Feng had no choice but to return to the continent in order to avoid the excessively agitated Elder Dragon King from killing his way to Mount Zhijin. He wanted to refine medicine and evolve once more. On Mount Lao, a handsome and calm man with a dark red mark between his brows was telling Linoy some secrets. After the upheaval, you guys can be considered the 5th generation, and we descenders can be classified as the 4th generation. Asterisk 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 was also speaking. Everything is ready. Naoi, we can bring in that heaven-chosen prince from the Hua dynasty. Updating so early, I don't think it's the final radiance of the setting sun. We can still salvage the situation. For the fastest and error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 394. Mount Lao was shrouded in white mist. The plants were sparkling and spiritual. The 1,000-year-old Taoist temple on the mountain was simple and unadorned. Red-crowned cranes were spiraling in the air, clear springs flowed through the pine forest, and the sea below was bright and clear. Linoy was quite tranquil. She didn't open her mouth and only listened quietly. The man with a cluster of dark red patterns on his forehead was called Han Wenze. He was handsome and calm, and his eyes were full of spirit. The secrets he recounted were extremely astonishing. In the post-civilization era, there were a total of 5 mysterious changes on Earth. All of them were abnormal changes. This was the reason Han Wenze had divided the 5 generations. In theory, mutants should appear after every mysterious change on Earth and promote the evolution of some living things. The last one was the most astonishing. It happened in the last year, and it was a large-scale global evolution. The last time was 22 years ago, followed by the second. The effects should be the weakest the first time. In the post-civilization era, the 5 mysterious changes spanned 2 to 300 years. In theory, the first and second generation mutants are all dead. Their lifespans have run out and they can't hold on until now. In truth, Han Wenze guessed that there might not have been any first-generation evolvers at all. That was because the scope of the mysterious changes was limited. Even if a rare mutant fruit appeared, it might not be a coincidence that a creature would encounter it. 5 mysterious changes, 5 generations of evolvers. Are there 5 batches of descenders? Linoy finally spoke. You're very smart. Han Wenze nodded. The red pattern between his brows was like a dark red flame, emitting a faint glow. This made his temperament extremely outstanding. The scope of the first mysterious change was very small and the number of folded spaces was limited. There might not be any descenders coming, he said. Han Wenze concluded that there were currently 5 generations of evolvers on Earth, regardless of whether it was the aboriginals or the descenders. Linoy frowned for the first time. Her elegant and beautiful face was no longer calm. If this news were to spread to the outside world, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. Han Wenze and the middle-aged woman beside him were considered the 4th generation. Were there still people from even further back? Don't worry. Even if there are old monsters alive, they won't dare to act recklessly because their lifespans have dried up. Some of them are like lamps without oil. Unless the Earth recovers and the effects of the mutant fruits increase, only then will those old monsters take the risk to come out. Otherwise, they can only lie dormant, not daring to act recklessly. Apart from that, there was originally a remnant race on Earth. They were fortunate enough not to be exterminated in ancient times and considered themselves as the orthodox race. However, this group of people might not really dare to shed all pretense of cordiality with the descenders. Troubled times have arrived. I believe descenders from the outer realms will appear in an endless stream. Apart from the path behind the famed mountains, there will also be battleships flying over from time to time. It could be seen that Han Wenze no longer wanted to hide anything from Linoy. He wanted her to understand some of the secrets of this world. Beside him was a woman dressed in modern clothing with an ancient hairstyle. Her hair was adorned with a jade hairpin and a string of beads. She had a pretty face and bright eyes. Her name was Huang Weiwei. With a smile on her face, she passed an item to Lin Naoi. It was a small seal. It was warm and translucent, as if it had been polished from brass. It also looked like a piece of jade. This is a gift from that heaven-chosen prince of the imperial court of evolvers. This brass divine seal is shockingly powerful. In the southern sea, the old dragon king had almost set out to kill Chufeng, but he held back for the sake of the dragonification fruit. In the end, he didn't leave that mysterious seabed. There was a great explosion at the bottom of the sea in the eastern sea. The true dragon's lair has recovered and the domains have strangled Long Zhe, he muttered to himself as he sat cross-legged at the bottom of the sea. The evolvers on the continent had also received news that the cause of Long Zhe's death was actually the revival of the domains in the ruins at the bottom of the sea. After understanding this, everyone let out a sigh of relief. What were they afraid of? They were worried that Chufeng would evolve to an even higher level and kill Long Zhe with his own power. That would be extremely terrifying. We have to be on guard. This Chufeng's attainments in domains are astonishing. I seriously suspect that the explosion at the Dragon Palace at the bottom of the sea was caused by him. Someone from the Origin Magnetic Immortal Cave guessed. It's fine as long as he doesn't rely on the energy of an evolver to kill. If a domain researcher hasn't reached the Great Master Realm, it's quite easy to kill him unless he has the advantage. All in all, everyone was worried that Chufeng would make another breakthrough on the path of evolution. A domain researcher would have to reach the Great Master level before they could become truly terrifying. And before that, there were many methods to kill them. For instance, assassination. It was simple, violent, and extremely effective. Fortunately, Demon King Chu isn't too heaven-defying. Otherwise, I'll start to doubt my life. A corporate member let out a sigh of relief. That was because Long Zhe was the number 2 character of the Southern Sea Dragon race. It was truly shocking for such an entity to be killed. In the cosmos, at the edge of the solar system, numerous incomparably cold battleships blotted out the sky and covered the Earth. They were like a densely packed forest of steel arranged in a shocking manner. In truth, they had long since approached this star system. It was just that they had been delayed along the way, and were carefully observing the void as they approached the solar system. That was because there were too many terrifying legends regarding this ancient and mysterious starry land. During that ancient and glorious era, even those imperial dynasties of evolvers and those powerful evolutionary sects that used quasi-divine beasts to pull their carriages had to be cautious after arriving here. So much so that they had to get off early and rely on themselves to cross the void toward that planet as a sign of respect. There were many battleships covering the sky and Earth. They were very cautious as they probed the withered planets such as Pluto and Neptune to see if there were any abnormalities. Earth's former glory was still a deterrent to this day. This fleet didn't dare be careless for fear that something might have been left behind in this region. Han Wenze of Mount Lao was right. These were troubled times and the great era of chaos had arrived. Even the extraterrestrials were approaching, and all kinds of evolved beings were about to come into being. At this moment, the Penglai Immortal Island was shrouded in a hazy immortal mist and couldn't be seen clearly from afar. At this moment, some people were sailing westward on small boats to reach land. As descenders, we who are hibernating near the Qilint's lair should also go out for a walk. Similarly, there were also people moving from the North Pole. They were true extraterrestrials. Some of them had been hibernating for 22 years, and were now beginning to awaken and walk out of their habitat. In a certain folded space behind a certain mountain in northern Europe, a figure rose up and said, "It's time for me to take that step and grace Earth with my presence." Similarly in the west, on Mount Olympus, a stone door was glowing as if some ancient path was about to be penetrated. It emitted violent energy fluctuations and caused the 12 powerful plants on the mountain to tremble violently. In the east, in the depths of Mount Taihang, a blinding light was emitting from the folded space. It was boundlessly terrifying, and many prehistoric giant beasts were overwhelmed with shock. They were trembling in fear as they prostrated themselves on the ground. At this time, Chu Feng had returned to land. He had left with his brothers but returned alone. He glanced back at the sea and then waved at the distant flying saucer before leaving the coast in large strides. Swoosh! He possessed astonishing speed and covered over 2,000 meters with a single step. It was practically no different from flying. At the same time, the air exploded like smoke while he was running. The scene was somewhat terrifying, and the sonic boom was extremely terrifying. Chu Feng returned and crossed the land toward Jiangning. His target was Mount Zhijin. He wanted to borrow the revered 8 trigrams furnace to refine medicine and evolve once again. Mount Zhijin had the reputation of Jinling's elegance. Chu Feng had arrived once again. His speed was extremely fast, and he didn't delay along the way. He dared to rush over as fast as lightning because he didn't want any accidents to happen. He wanted to refine the medicine as soon as possible. The mountain was majestic and elegant like a winding dragon. Moreover, it was shrouded in purple mist, and the springs were deep and serene. Chu Feng stood within the mountain. He first observed the terrain and then observed the qi within the mountain to see if it was feasible. Domain researchers had to understand the pulse of the mountains and rivers. After all, the commotion here last time was too great. The extreme yang flame essence, draconic qi, and the golden heptaradiance were not a big deal. Chu Feng had no choice but to be careful. It's feasible. Chu Feng felt that there were no problems after observing the terrain and qi of the earth. The corpse buried in the land of extreme Yin shouldn't cause any trouble. It's rare for me to refine pills. It's too boring to stay here alone. I really hope someone comes to join in the fun, Chu Feng muttered to himself. He wasn't afraid of outside interference. If someone with ulterior motives were to come, he would welcome them with open arms. At that time, he would burn them all to death. This was the location of the revered 8 trigrams furnace. Last time, it had burned a group of experts until they were wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves. Even the problem lady's grandfather had been tricked and was howling in pain from being burned. Once this place was activated, its might was obvious to all. Chu Feng didn't think he would be attacked by outsiders while he was within the revered 8 trigrams furnace. As such, he felt that it was better to have fun with others than to be happy alone. He could reveal his whereabouts slightly and attract some people over. To be more precise, he would take the initiative to leak information and lure those with ulterior motives over. Of course, he felt that the effect wouldn't be too great. After all, a tragedy had happened here. Moreover, he was already notorious among the people he wanted to trick. They all knew that he was a conman. In any case, he was going to refine pills here. This could be considered cutting the grass to hit the rabbit and taking advantage of the situation. Otherwise, he would just be idling around. Chu Feng left the mountain and went for a spin. He accidentally revealed his tracks and was seen by some people. Chu Feng is at Mount Zhijin, someone cried out in surprise. Some major powers received reports immediately that Chu Feng had arrived at Mount Zhijin once again. This affected many people's nerve. Could it be that there's something good there? People were seriously doubtful. Chu Feng paid no attention to the reactions of all parties. He directly entered the revered 8 trigrams furnace cave and meditated for a whole night. Early the next morning, Chu Feng made his move when the rosy glow of dawn was at its peak. He activated all the domains and began to refine pills when the violet qi came from the east. Boom! The ancient domains in this area were all activated. The patterns on the ground interweaved and emitted rays of light. This morning, Mount Zhijin was covered in rosy clouds. Most importantly, strands of violet qi floated over from the direction of the rising sun and entered the revered 8 trigrams furnace. Within the 8 trigrams furnace, flames danced and a fragrance assailed the nostrils. Chu Feng was sitting there cross-legged as a medicinal fragrance wafted over. Time to refine. The opportunity to sever the 8th shackle has arrived. Chu Feng muttered to himself. The whole world was evolving. Extraterrestrials and the self-proclaimed orthodox Penglai remnant races were all about to appear. Chu Feng naturally hoped to become stronger to deal with the changes. Yes, it's time to move out and kill that Chu Feng. Huang Weiwei and Han Wenze were conversing. Chapter 395. In the starry skies, the battleships were like a forest of steel as they entered the solar system. One by one, they landed on Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus. Then, they approached Mars. In the past, during that glorious era, there were garrisons on these planets. They had built giant cities and were responsible for guarding the Stargate. During that era, large numbers of evolved beings would come on a pilgrimage. They would dismount from their mounts or walk out of their war chariot. At that time, the constellation vines were connected to these planets. News could be transmitted in an instant, and the entire solar system was filled with boundless vitality. Now, battleships covered the sky and Earth. Large numbers of small airships were sent into these planets to search for traces left behind by that glorious era. However, the detectors Earth had placed in outer space were all ineffective. They simply couldn't capture these battleships and airships. Han Wenze's prediction had come true. The era of chaos and beauty had arrived. Creatures from outer space had appeared in batches and were about to descend on Earth in large numbers. The holy land of Greek mythology, Mount Olympus, was glowing from a stone gate on its peak. The vast energy fluctuations alarmed all the European countries. Boom! But in the end, a silver mushroom cloud rose up and a great explosion occurred. The chaotic energy waves ran amok and flattened some of the mountain peak. A creature stretched out a hand from the stone gate. It was flowing with silver blood and emitting a terrifying aura that shook the peaks. Crack! In the end, the stone gate was blasted open. A howl of despair was heard as the hand spasmed. The body connected to the stone gate was torn into pieces and extinguished in the flames. Back then, Chu Feng, the black yak, and the Manchurian tiger had ascended this divine mountain. Back then, Yellow Cattle had said that some orthodoxies wanted to take a shortcut and enter Earth. Doing so was playing with fire. Now, it seemed the prophecy had come true. The creatures on this path had failed, and some had died miserably. The stronger the creature, the more difficult it was to cross over. It was clear just now that the creature with silver blood had definitely surpassed the shackled realm. On the same day, a certain famed mountain in northern Europe was engulfed in black mist and surging with black light. In the end, a creature stumbled out from a folded space accompanied by black flames. His body was full of cracks and some of them were so deep that bones could be seen. However, he was laughing loudly with disheveled hair and eyes emitting black beams of light. He had succeeded in descending to Earth. He was very strong and very young. Wisps of Een power emanated from his body, and he wore ancient Eastern clothing. However, at this moment, he was already in tatters. Hee. He was laughing, revealing a mouthful of snow-white teeth. He adjusted his injured body, and then he walked out of the mountain region with large step. On that very day, many beast kings and powerful evolvers came to seek refuge. That was because many creatures already knew that there was an expert from the outer realms here and were constantly paying attention to him. After that, he occupied a famous divine mountain in the west and temporarily went into seclusion. God is here. A piece of news spread in a small area. In fact, it wasn't peaceful everywhere. Suspicious creatures had appeared in the folded spaces in the depths of some famous mountains, and powerful energy fluctuations would occasionally surge out. Mount Taihang, for example, caused tens of thousands of beasts to tremble in fear yesterday, prostrating themselves on the ground and wailing in anguish. The era of extraterrestrial experts and beings from different galaxies descending on a large scale was about to arrive. Some were relatively ordinary, but some were extremely powerful. They were true divine sons and daughters, able to look down on an entire region on their own. Their radiance was dazzling. After some princes and saintesses came to the declining earth, it wouldn't be too much even if they considered themselves as gods. Right now, even creatures of this level were approaching, traces of them appearing. Someone was going to come. On Mount Lao, Han Wenze, who had a dark red mark between his brows, suddenly stopped talking. He raised his head and revealed an astonished expression as he gazed into the depths of the mountain range. Beside him, Huang Weiwei also turned around and gazed into the depths of Mount Lao. Her pretty face was full of astonishment. "The prince is coming? He's going on a pilgrimage." The next moment, both of them moved, bringing with them violent gales that sent sand and stones flying. Many thistles, thorns, and shrubs exploded and snapped as they ran. On Mount Lao, under an ancient silver pine, Linoi also sensed something and gazed into the depths of the mountain range. At the same time, many people from the Celestial Biology Institute moved and entered the depths of the mountain. Mount Lao was overflowing with the morning glow of the morning sun. The mountain forest was warm and suffused with a faint golden hue. The mist was dyed multicolored and everything was peaceful. At this time, an astonishing energy aura spread out from the folded space and engulfed everything. Han Wenze and Huang Wei were rushed over and stared at the mountainous region before them. There was a towering mountain towering into the clouds. This was a giant mountain that had appeared after the upheavals. It was thousands of meters tall and had never been seen before. This was the so-called folded space. There was a mysterious path connecting it to the distance. Specks of divine light and auspicious energy suffused the mountainous region like an immortal land. There were dozens of powerful entities there, like a group of heavenly soldiers and generals. Most of these entities were in human form. A small number were ferocious birds and beasts as mounts. There were men and women here, old and young. All of them were full of vigor and extraordinary bearing. Who would have thought there would be so many outer realm entities in the depths of Mount Lao? It would surely cause great waves if news of this were to spread. This was the confidence of the Imperial Court of Evolvers. Back then, there were many more people on their journey. Many died along the way, but in the end, dozens of people still managed to approach. Naturally, they stopped immediately after arriving here and didn't dare advance rashly. The final life and death checkpoint lay before them. This formless heavenly moat made all experts apprehensive. There were vicious beasts and scaled warhorses flowing with radiance. The people sitting on them were all clad in shining armor and possessed astonishing auras. They were armed with heavenly dagger axes and halberds. All of them were extremely powerful experts. Behind them, there was an old man with a medicine basket on his back and a middle-aged man with a fist-sized furnace in his hand. This group of evolved beings had been carefully selected. Some of them knew how to refine medicine, some knew how to refine weapons, and some studied domains. If they were to descend successfully, they wouldn't be lacking in talents and would immediately become a powerful evolutionary sect. After occupying a famed mountain, they would be able to expand rapidly. This was the disparity. How could the previous descenders have such a lineup? The heaven-chosen prince of the Imperial Court of Evolvers had brought a group of people with him. There was a golden chariot flowing with hazy radiance and pulled by a number of nameless beasts. It was emitting a dense blood energy that intimidated one's soul. This chariot was quite ancient and engraved with the marks of the passage of time. Moreover, it would surge with waves of divine light from time to time and transform into white tigers and vermilion bird. The scene was astonishing. There was a young man on the chariot. He wore a purple gold crown on his head, and his jet-black hair hung down his chest and back. His eyes were as deep and unfathomable as the sea. He was silent and stifling. Doubtlessly, he was very powerful and his evolutionary level was extremely high. He was clad in metallic armor and stood unmoving on the chariot. His face was handsome and, despite his young age, possessed a certain dignity. Divine light surged from the golden chariot and transformed into vermilion birds and cheilans. They circled around the chariot and even let out bursts of cries. This kind of scene was terrifying. It almost made people think that a certain god had reincarnated into the mortal world and was standing on the chariot. On the golden chariot there was a beautiful lady driving the chariot. There was also a fairy-like beauty dressed in pure white holding a sword for him. There was also someone holding a mysterious glowing scroll in his hand. Han Wenze and Huang Weiwei felt their hearts palpitate after seeing this. They couldn't help but lower their heads under that kind of majesty. Then, they directly kowtowed and paid their respect. "Greetings, Prince. Rise." The young man on the chariot spoke. He didn't try to rope them in, nor did he reveal any heavenly arts. His voice was very normal and calm. In the distance, the upper echelons of celestial biology saw this scene and felt their hearts sink. Their backing members, Han Wenze and Huang Weiwei, were actually kowtowing to that person. This caused them to fall silent. As people of the modern era, they found it difficult to accept this kind of kowtow. It was too harsh, but they could see that the group of evolved beings possessed astonishing strength. The impact on them was too great. These are troubled times. The peaceful years on Earth have come to an end. No one knows what will happen next. The corporations relied on descenders, but these outer realm entities were also divided into different grades. The people of celestial biology knew that the true big shots had arrived. Within the folded space, the heaven-chosen prince of the dynasty of evolved beings was standing on the golden chariot and talking to Han Wenze and Huang Weiwei. His voice wasn't loud and others couldn't hear him. Following which, many people began to move about as though they were holding a certain ceremony. The domain researchers were arranging things and then an altar was formed. The prince was fairly calm. He glanced at the white-robed beauty beside him and nodded slightly. This was his maid and could be considered his trusted aide. Her appearance was pleasant and refined, almost like a god's emissary. Her whole body was suffused with a pure and holy aura. The white-robed lady smiled faintly and bid him farewell. She climbed up the altar with an ancient scroll emitting divine light in her hand, and the whole area immediately lit up. Boom! Within a split second, the entire mountainous region erupted in flames. The white-robed lady was crossing over and was wrapped up by the runes of the altar. She was about to be transported to the forest outside. During this process, some of the secret weapons on her body exploded and turned into powder. Following which, the altar behind her also exploded and turned into beams of energy. She staggered about in the flames as though she was about to be ignited and turned into ashes. But in the end, the mysterious scroll in her hands saved her. It was as though it had died in her place. Page after page was burned and turned into golden energy which enveloped her. Finally, she set foot on this mountainous region. "Greetings, fairy." Han Wenze and Huang Weiwei immediately stepped forward to greet the white-robed lady. "You two don't need to be so formal. My name is Mu Qing." The white-robed lady smiled sweetly and amiably. She then turned around and bid farewell to the people from the dynasty of evolved beings. In the distance, the people from celestial biology were alarmed. They knew that the situation on Mount Lao had changed. Someone from the dynasty of evolved beings had actually crossed over. To them, this was like the appearance of a divine messenger. Mu Qing was a close and trusted maid of the dynasty of evolved beings. Her status was quite high, so Han Wenze and Huang Weiyue didn't dare slight her. Before long, Mu Qing followed them to Mount Lao. She climbed a spiritual peak and met Linoi under a silver pine tree in front of a small Taoist temple. Chapter 396. After saying goodbye to Linoi, Mu Qing's expression was calm as she left the small Taoist temple that had been baptized by 1,000 years of wind and rain. Han Wenze and Huang Weiyue accompanied her to another spiritual peak. There were 3 thatched cottages, a stone table, and a few wooden blocks. This place was very secluded, and the bamboo forest was green and lush, carrying a fresh and clean aura. Mu Qing's clothes were as white as snow and untainted by dust. Although she was a maid of the prince, she was destined to enjoy a high status on Mount Lao after crossing over. Han Wenze and Huang Weiyue were quite cautious and treated her as a noble lady. They didn't dare to be a maid and report to her. Mu Qing wasn't arrogant because of her status as the prince's confidant. She smiled warmly at the two and nodded after understanding the general situation. When Huang Weiyue mentioned Linoi, Mu Qing politely reminded and corrected her, saying that she should be addressed as princess. Yes, I was careless. Please forgive me, Fairy Mu Qing. We've always wanted to bring the prince here as soon as possible. Huang Weiyue expressed her apology. Han Wenze then explained the current situation to Mu Qing. He mentioned the Descenders and the 3 Immortal Islands. He even pointed out the names of the current experts. If the prince crosses over soon, who can compete with him? Even if the other fairies and divine sons arrive later, they'll be one step behind and lose the initiative. Han Wenze smiled respectfully. Mu Qing's snow-white clothes fluttered in the wind. She was tranquil and otherworldly. She sipped her tea and said, "Please take a trip to invite that Chu Feng." "Actually, we're preparing to take action against him," Han Wenze replied. Mu Qing shook her head and revealed a faint smile. "No, the prince cherishes talents and needs such a virtuous person. Invite him." Han Wenze was startled and didn't know how to respond. "From your introductions, I already know that this person is extraordinary. The prince will need such a person after crossing over." Mu Qing smiled. She then turned to look at the blue sea below and said calmly, "Yes, we should find a way to make him acknowledge the prince. It's best if we don't act rudely." Han Wenze and Huang Weiyue descended the mountain and only spoke after they were far away. "This Miss Mu wants us to invite Chu Feng, it's really..." Han Wenze frowned. He felt that things were a little difficult. "You don't really think that Miss Mu Qing is interested in him because he's a virtuous man, do you?" Huang Weiyue smiled. Han Wenze turned around to look at her in surprise. Huang Weiyue said, "Through our introduction, Miss Mu Qing already knows what kind of person Chu Feng is. She also knows that he used to have a good relationship with Linoi. He must have his reasons for giving us such orders." "What do you mean?" Han Wenze felt that he didn't have a good grasp of a woman's psychology. Now that he recalled Mu Qing's smiling face and her saying that she invited Chu Feng over, he really felt puzzled. Miss Mu Qing said that the prince cherishes talent. It's obvious that even if he invited Chu Feng here, he would only ask him to follow the prince as a subordinate, not a friend on equal footing. Huang Weiyue explained with a faint smile. She even emphasized that it's best if Chu Feng acknowledges the prince and doesn't act rudely. That's the main point. Han Wenze's expression changed. Is she hinting that after we subdue Chu Feng, we have to be respectful when we meet the prince? Huang Weiyue nodded. To be more precise, we have to bring Chu Feng back and have him kowtow to the prince. Is there a need to do that? Han Wenze turned back and glanced at the spiritual peak behind him. That elegant lady in white had a warm smile on her face and looked very kind. She didn't put on any airs with them, but it seemed that they had to be more cautious around her. Huang Weiwei said, This Miss Mu Qing is still very considerate of the prince. She knows the relationship between Chu Feng and Linoy, yet she still wants to do this. Humiliating Chu Feng is secondary, but she wants Linoy to see the situation clearly. If she sees Chu Feng kowtowing at the prince's feet respectfully, how do you think Linoy will look at Chu Feng, and how will she look at the prince? One is kowtowing, while the other is high and mighty, yet calm and profound. Han Wenze was speechless. Now that he thought about it, this Mu Qing might be the prince's maid, but he really couldn't underestimate her. She was asking them to do these things with a smile on her face. Huang Weiwei reminded, although she's only the prince's maid, her status is higher than many people. You and I have to be more cautious. This person isn't easy to deal with. Afterward, they all revealed faint smiles at the mention of Chu Feng. This person was a tragedy from start to finish, and he wouldn't have a good ending. The dark red mark between Han Wenze's brows lit up. He was evaluating Chu Feng's strength and the preparations they had to make. He didn't want to be careless. He has severed 7 shackles and can conquer experts with 8 severed shackles. He's an outstanding talent, but unfortunately, his foundations are too lacking when facing an imperial court of evolvers. Han Wenze shook his head. Huang Weiwei revealed a cold smile. He's just a chess piece. Even if he's stunning now, he might still be ordinary after reaching the carefree realm. There are too many such examples. Moreover, what future does he have under such circumstances? Unless he's willing to become a servant. He's only severed his 7th shackle. Logically speaking, he won't be able to evolve again in a short period of time. But just to be safe, let's go to the Qilin's old lair and invite some Dao friends, Han Wenze suggested. He and Huang Weiwei hadn't been hibernating in the Origin Magnetic Immortal Cave all these years. Instead, they were at another gathering place for Descenders, near the Qilin's old lair. There's news that he's currently at Mount Zhijin in Jiangning, said Huang Weiwei. Han Wenze was quite cautious. During this period of safety, don't approach him at any place suitable for deployment of domains. Don't set foot on Mount Zhijin. It's better to wait outside for him to come out. They decided to first go to the Qilin's old lair to invite some people. Just to be safe, they had to call a few more people. At the same time, it was tantamount to roping in some followers for the prince. Even though they were all Descenders, they were divided into different levels. How could people like them compare to a heavenly prince from an imperial court? They knew that in the near future, all the famed mountains on earth would be occupied by saintesses, divine sons, and Buddhas. These people were terrifying. Their resplendent radiance would pierce everyone's eyes. As for the natives, there wasn't much hope. Mu Qing actually appeared just as the two were leaving Mount Lao. She presented a magical weapon with an amiable smile and said, "It's always good to have more weapons for self-defense when you're outside. This is the spirit binding cord." It looked like a hemp rope with a faint golden hempen luster. However, Han Wenze and Huang Weiwei were moved because they knew what this item was made of. The immortal binding cord was a type of secret treasure with unfathomable divine might. It could even bind a golden arhat directly. It was truly wondrous and unpredictable. This spirit binding rope, on the other hand, was a simplified version. It could easily capture cultivators at the shackled realm. The two sighed inwardly. The Imperial Court of Evolution was indeed quite confident. A mere maid could casually gift them such a weapon after crossing over. It was truly terrifying. What did that heavenly prince have on him? He must have even more astonishing secret treasures. He might even have a fragment of the Golden Mother. He could refine a holy weapon on earth. Such a divine sun-level character simply couldn't contend against him. Such a person's talents were terrifying. Moreover, his evolutionary level had long since reached a high enough level. Add to that his secret treasures, it was enough to suppress the declining earth. The two went on their way after expressing their thanks. Huang Weiwei said, "Do you see? This Miss Mu Qing gifted us the spirit-binding cord just in case. She wants us to capture Chu Feng and make him kneel at the prince's feet." Mount Lao was within Shandong's borders. The Qilins' old lair was also here, so they didn't need to take a long detour. Jiangning, Mount Zhijin. Flames were raging and essence energy was surging. All sorts of energy flames were pulsating in the area, forming a wondrous scene as the central region was set ablaze. But others didn't know that the central region was the revered 8 trigrams furnace. This was a legendary terrain that could nurture fortunes, refine great medicines, nurture weapons, and even temper oneself. After Chu Feng's appraisal, he found that this was a man-made 8 trigrams furnace and not a natural one. In truth, if it were a natural one, Chu Feng wouldn't be able to enjoy such fortunes. With his current evolutionary level, this kind of terrain was still a terrifying zone for him. That was because a truly natural 8 trigrams furnace would have naturally branded patterns of the great Tao that would form a natural domain. He would be refined to death if he were to enter. This small 8 trigrams furnace laid down by the ancients was just right for him and could still endure. At this time, several weapons were glowing beside him and being nurtured once again. At the same time, various mutant fruits were piled together and melted into a medicinal liquid. The thunderstruck wood was also releasing a strand of natural vitality. Of course, he only used a small section of the wood and put away the rest. This item was too precious and couldn't be wasted. Even though there were many in the dragon lair, it was truly difficult to find them in the outside world. Additionally, a drop of toad's blood, as well as a few drops of rock and tiger blood, were all added into the medicinal liquid. This was the miraculous aspect of the revered 8 trigrams furnace. One didn't need to know how to refine weapons or medicines. The entire cave was a natural treasure furnace that could nurture fortunes. It could directly produce pills. Rumor had it that a natural 8 trigrams furnace could directly nurture peerless divine pills and saint pills. It was a world-shaking feat. One day and one night passed. Chu Feng was grimacing in pain and suffering. After all, some flames had seeped into the furnace, and he felt like he was about to be roasted. Finally, at noon the next day, he was satisfied. There were 8 silver spheres around him, emitting a rich medicinal fragrance that refreshed the mind. The pills had been formed. This made him feel amazed. This kind of terrain was indeed suitable for nurturing pills. He didn't even need to expend much effort to succeed in the end. At the same time, his weapons also became more intelligent. Eat. Chu Feng didn't hesitate. Under such circumstances, nothing was more important than strength. A finger-sized silver pill slid down his throat and immediately transformed into an astonishing stream of heat that rushed into his body. Following which, a wave of energy broke through a dam. Boom! As expected, the mutant fruits produced excellent effects after being refined into a pill. The medicinal efficacy was raised by a large margin. That day, Chu Feng severed his 8th shackle with relative ease. His strength rose sharply and was much more powerful than before. Blood energy surged around him, and he once again obtained a special ability. His entire body was sparkling and translucent like an indestructible golden body. This time, he had severed the shackle on his back. Presently, there seemed to be a golden spear lying dormant there, ready to fly out at any moment and pierce through all obstructions. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.